Well, good evening, everyone. We'll call to order this regular meeting of the Willow City Council for Tuesday, June 25th, 2024. Item 2 on our agenda this evening are Pledge of Allegiance. Vice Mayor Hudson, would you do the honors and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sir, please stand. Luke,
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 3, roll call. City Clerk Amos Hoover, please.
Councilmember Thomas.
Here.
Councilmember Sprague.
Here.
Councilmember Vaughn.
here.
Vice Mayor Hudson.
Here.
Mayor Hanson.
Here.
Everyone's present, sir.
Thank you. Before we continue tonight, I ask that we have a moment of silence this evening for in honor and memory of Dr. Leroy Burnham, Doctor of Veterinary Medicine, practicing for well over 50 years. He's also retired United States Army Colonel, and actually he practiced veterinary medicine for over 60 years. If we could have a moment of silence in Dr. Burnham's memory, please. Yeah, I think you may Dr. Burnham rest in peace. And God bless him and his family. Moving on to item 4, changes to the agenda. City Manager Marty Brown.
Yes, it's not really a change, but I just wanted to take a moment, if we could, to introduce our summer high school interns who are here at the table with us, Carissa Vasquez and Helen Harlan. They just started a few weeks ago, and as the council may recall, we received a $5,000 grant from the California City Management Foundation, enabling us to hire some high school students who would have a chance to see what it's like in local government, what our jobs are like. They've been out on a ride along with the fire chief and a tour ride along with the superintendent of public works and tours of the library and other city facilities. They're working on a whole variety of different projects for us right now. But in addition to that, they're also going to be doing a capstone project that'll come back to the council for consideration in early August. One's the 50-50 program for sidewalk repair that we had talked about some time ago, and using matching funds to offer a program, like a grant program to residents in the community. And the other one will be recommendations for how to use possibly our park impact fees that we have remaining in the park impact fee fund. So we have those 2 projects. And in addition to that, I just want to mention that John Dunleavy, retired city manager from Auburn and Winters, is also helping free of charge to be a mentor and help with the capstone projects, and just a little bit of training in government 101, as John put it. Obviously, he's a colleague of mine, so I know him. And when he heard we got the grant, he offered to help us out. So should be an interesting summer.
Very good, Marty. Thank you very much. Well, welcome, Helen. and
Welcome
Krista.
aboard.
Yeah, welcome to City Willows, and thank you for attending the meeting tonight. Have a great summer.
Thank
Should-
you for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome anytime. It's your meeting. It's a public meeting. So there you go. Thank you. Good luck this summer. And thanks for the help. Much appreciated. Anything further, Marty, in reference to changes
No,
to the
that's
agenda?
it.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 5, public comment and consent calendar forum. All matters in the consent calendar are considered routine and are approved by one motion and vote unless council members or the city manager first requests that a matter be removed for separate discussion and action. Individuals wishing to address the city council concerning consent calendar items or regarding matters that are not already on the agenda are invited to make oral comments of up to 3 minutes at this time. And please address your comments to the mayor and council members and not to staff and or the audience. And just as a reminder, by state law, the council is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Are there any public comments first off on any matters not on the agenda tonight? Not on the agenda? Okay, no comments. How about any public comments in reference to the consent calendar this evening? No public comments? Okay, very good. Moving on to item 5A, register approval. Consider approval of the general checking, payroll, and direct deposit check registers. Item 5B, minutes approval. Consider approval of the May 29th, 2024 and June 11th, 2024 council meeting minutes. Item 5C, Prentice Long contract amendment to comprehensively update the Willows Municipal Code. Consider authorizing the city manager to amend the contract with Prentice Long for a time extension until March 31, 2025, in order to complete comprehensively updating the City of Willows Municipal Code. And that is the consent calendar for this evening. Pleasure to the council in reference to consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, I'd ask that we hold the minutes for June 11th, regular meeting minutes, please.
Okay, Councilmember Sprague has requested to pull the June 11th minutes for discussion. Mr. Sprague?
Yes, on discussion and action item there, 7B, the I-5 feasibility study final report. It indicates that we received a presentation and accepted the completion of the I-5 feasibility report. But I think without exception, all of us spoke about our displeasure. And I think your comments, Mr. Mayor, that we were sorely disappointed. Don't let me paraphrase you, or trying to paraphrase you, but sorely disappointed with the outcome of that I-5 study in regard to Willows. So I would ask that we amend those minutes to reflect our disappointment.
No, very good, Mr. Sprague. No, you got that. That's what I said.
Disappointed. You were sorely
Extremely-
disappointed.
Extremely so. Mr. Sprague has recommended that amendment to the June 11, 2024 council meeting minutes. We have consensus from the council for that amendment.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Mr. City Clerk?
I can do that. Do you know, how would you like it phrased?
I'm
I
sorry.
say that, how would you like it phrased? I say that because being disappointed is not an action. So when I did
Right,
that,
well, we accepted
correct.
the item, but the council was extremely disappointed with the product.
Okay.
And
If-
it's all captured on recording, so.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll
Just wanted to-
figure out a way to reflect that.
Wanted to make sure it was clear. Okay, very good. Any further questions, comments, reference to consent calendar? from the
Mr.
council?
Mayor, if I may, I'd like to pull item number C for discussion, the Prentice Long contract amendment for the municipal code.
Very good. We will pull item C, and in the meantime, in reference to item 5A and 5B with the June 11th meeting minutes as amended, pleasure of the council in reference to item 5A and B.
Move to approve.
Second,
Councilmember Thomas has moved to approve items 5A and B as amended, and Councilmember Biden.
second, yes, sir.
Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries unanimously. Mr. Biden, item 5C.
Yes, members of council, I understand the delay situation, but what I'm concerned about is that we entered into this agreement for a substantially shorter period of time to complete this code, this municipal code update. And that when in the body of the contract, it makes references to remedies in the event that the firm, the law firm, which is how it's referred to, firm in the contract, fails to deliver. And there's other indications of prior approval for changes and things like that. But mostly it says a law firm shall provide a review, drafting, editing, update of City of Willows Municipal Code, which will include the following. And the item I'm specifically interested in is ensure timely compliance on anticipated timeline. So for me, this is the first I've heard that we're this far in arrears, and I apologize if I've heard that earlier. But I'm really concerned that we're asking to go all the way out to March of 25 when we're already past the original contracted deadline. And I don't know what the remedy is. Sometimes in contract law, there is remedy in form of deductions or reductions in costs, but I don't know what the case might be here. So again, we entered in good faith into a contract to complete this task way before now, and now we're asking for a substantial extension to complete it.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So I believe actually the contract expires to June 31st. That said, we do realize and apologize that it's taken this long to get a product to you, and we are amenable to adjusting that March. The idea was I didn't want to have to come back for a further extension. If that, we need to have a public meeting. We need to meet with staff to sort of develop and, make sure they're okay with our changes, that sort of thing. So that said, we're amenable to shortening that timeframe substantially. Ideally, I think we would set it at December 31st. Because like I said, we're going to need to have a public meeting, meet with staff, that sort of thing. So that would be our sort of guidance with respect to that.
Certainly December is better than March. And it also is the calendar year 24, which I happen to like. And there is revenue expectation from the changes in the code, which we are not realizing as we wait to change the code. So if December 31st of this year is the best that you can do, then I personally think I want the best you can do.
I appreciate that. And I would appreciate, setting that time with the idea that we'll get it to you sooner than that if possible. And we'll
I like that
we'll
second
push for
part.
that. Yeah.
I think the challenge has also been that we do have built in some public outreach and engagement, and we haven't yet started that. And I think that's, part of what Sean was suggesting is that it's not just staff work. It's like we're also have to get to the point where we can do a town hall meeting was one of the things we agreed to do, one town hall meeting and take it to planning commission as well. So, but it has to be substantially completed, right, before we do that. So we're not there yet. And that's going to take some time to get done. So we talked about trying to do that by the fall, having the town hall meeting and the planning commission and outreach. One thing also to note is that the zoning section of the code is probably the largest section of the code, if I'm not mistaken. It's
I believe
pretty,
so.
it's pretty robust. And as you can see, it's still in progress. So, and we've gotten a lot done, but yeah, the biggest chapter is still yet to come.
Very good. Well, as we've all discussed numerous times regarding the sales tax and other revenue dialogues, that anything we can do to reach and receive more revenue for the city sooner than later, and this is an example, we should expedite to the best of our ability, and I know that we will. Thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah.
Anything
Nice.
fur- anything further, Mr. Bowden?
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Vice Mayor Hudson?
I just have a quick question. So I see the municipal code update status sheet here. And it mentions something about a Supreme Court ruling in Grants Pass. Is that possibly going to be one of the holdups that holds us up from getting this approved when it comes to the vehicles and traffic?
It may be something that, I mean, based on this timing, I would say that we would try to be done with the project except for that piece. So that, we can deal with that piece potentially later on, especially if we set the contract, amend it so that we can still adjust it up until December 31st. I think the ruling should come out before then. And so we should be able to address that then.
That was the only thing I could see why it potentially, a holdup. And obviously we want it done right. We want it done fast. We want it done right.
Right.
So,
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's part of the
So, and
holdup.
That's kind of,
Yeah.
so I understand where Mr. Vaughn's coming from, where yes, we need this sooner than later, so we can make sure we have the revenue. I also want to make sure it's correct and accurate and not rushed at the same time.
Right, understood.
Not
yeah.
rushed, I guess.
Right.
So, thank you. Nothing else. That's all I had.
Any other further questions, comments from the council in reference to item 5C?
Mr. Mayor, yes, I too was very concerned about this because we had a window like this. and
Right.
now We are out this, and it's way past what we would have been last. And I
Right.
can accept that that was a total time needed. But, we're a year into this.
Right.
So, when we're in progress, are we starting it now or are we well into it or where are we with?
No, the latter.
project?
Yeah, we're well into it. Yeah. And like I said, I expect to sort of wrap up our comments within the next month or so and then be able to give that to staff and then they could turn around and we could have meetings and that sort of thing. And, they can give us our comments.
Well, I echo Mr. Vodden's concern. The sooner we get this, the easier it is going to be for planning, for everybody else in our organization to move forward, as well as capture. And I know we have some code enforcement issues and we're looking forward to some teeth.
Right.
To deal with some of that stuff because we've got some properties that be repaired
Right.
or cleaned up.
Yeah.
So some of that stuff, we really need it. So I would
Okay.
encourage, as much time you can dedicate it to as quickly as possible.
Okay. Yeah. Understood.
Any, okay, thank you, Mr. Thomas. Any further questions, comments from the council in reference to item 5C? Well, yeah, Counselor, it was a major undertaking. Was it a little bit bigger project than you thought it was initially?
Indeed.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. And, as stated, we want to do it correctly and do it, as well as we can. And so, yes, but yes, it was a heavier lift than we had anticipated.
Okay, all right, thank you.
To not be confused, this hasn't been updated since 88, correct? Am I getting my years mixed up?
It's,
don't
different
know.
sections have been updated different, I mean, there isn't just
Different.
one time for the whole
Okay.
code, but no one remembers the last time the entire code was examined.
Yeah, to that point, there are various state statutes that have been implemented that we need to incorporate into the code, and those are
So
complicated
there's
and,
things
right.
missing.
right, yes.
Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to the final product. So thank you thank you, Counselor,
Yeah, thank you.
for the explanation.
Yep.
Pleasure of the council in reference to item 5C. If there are no further questions or comments.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move item,
Can I ask one last question?
Yes.
no,
sir.
Back about the grants pass situation. Will
Yeah.
that hold up the rest of the municipal code? Or can that be amended later on?
That was my idea. Yeah, if I wasn't,
Okay.
I was trying to clarify that, but yeah, we would, look to sort of finalize it except for that piece and then address that piece later on if necessary.
Okay, perfect. That's what I would like to have. That would be the most expedient way to get it where it's going.
Yeah.
Now I'm done. I'm sorry.
no, that's okay.
Sorry, Councilmember.
I would have done it too. Mr. Mayor, I would like to move the approval of item 5C for the extension of the contract with Prentice Long for the Willis Municipal Code update with the modification of the time extension until December 31st, 2024 to complete comprehensively updating the City of Willis Municipal Code.
Mr. Vaughn has moved to approve item 5C with the amendment that the date be by December 31, 2024.
Yes, sir.
Is there a second? Second. Mr. Sprague has seconded the motion. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Item 6, public hearing. We have 2 public hearings agendized this evening. Item 6A, landscaping and lighting special assessment district authorization to levy assessments. Conduct the required public protest hearing and consider the attached resolution approving the engineer's report as filed, confirming the assessment diagram and amounts as set forth therein, and authorizing the levy and collection of the assessments for the fiscal year 2024-2025. Before I turn it over to our deputy city engineer this evening, or city manager, Marty Brown, do you have any?
I'm
comments?
gonna move right to, handing this over to, Ian is gonna be, presenting on the landscape and lighting, right?
Thank you, Marty.
Well, good evening. Ian.
evening.
Thank you for presenting tonight.
I just wanted, okay, so everybody can hear me okay, respectfully?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members, for the opportunity to present. A couple of very important items, starting off with the city's landscape and lighting assessment district, the final report. Tonight is the final step in the annual process for the city's landscape and lighting assessment district. As you may recall, at the May 14th, 2024 council meeting, the preliminary engineer's report was presented to council for consideration and input. At that meeting, council requested 2 changes. Number 1, for Zone A, the council commented that the exhibit did not include locations of the streetlights. This exhibit in the revised final report has been updated to show the streetlights for each location. For Zone C, the second item that was requested to be changed was related to Zone C, and the council requested that we double check the land use show for the parcels. We have reviewed and updated this information, and it did result in assessments for parcels in this zone to slightly change. This district allows the city to collect money annually to fund operation and maintenance of street lighting and landscaping in newly developed areas. With this assessment district, there are 3 zones: Birch Street subdivision, which is Zone A, which assesses for streetlights and landscaping of public parcels. Walmart, which is Zone B, which assesses for streetlights and portions of the traffic signal at Highway 162 and North Airport Road. And Basin Street Commercial Industrial, which is Zone C, which assesses for landscaping, streetlights, and weed abatement of the 2 large storm drain detention basins. The Streets and Highways Code governing this type of district requires engineers' reports to be filed annually. The report looks at anticipated O&M costs for lighting and landscaping in the upcoming year, looks at revenues and expenditures in the prior year, and derives a budget to maintain and operate facilities for the upcoming fiscal year in each zone. Anticipated expenses get spread to each parcel within each zone based on benefits received. Also, based on a council policy, 10 to 20% annual reserve balance is allowed in each zone to accumulate to pay for unanticipated expenditures. If the final report is accepted tonight, information will be transmitted to the county tax collector's office and assessments associated with each lot will get put on the tax roll and paid with property taxes. In the report, the council will see the actual proposed assessments per lot as well as a maximum assessment. The maximum assessment is established as an upper limit that gets indexed each year commensurate with the cost of living, which CPI. In the past, the council has directed that the maximum allowable assessment be indexed each year either by the CPI or 3%, whichever is greater. In the past year, the CPI has been 2.6%. In accordance with council direction in the past, the report is showing indexing the maximum assessment by 3%, which is the minimum. Properties cannot be assessed more than the maximum amount established each year in each zone without going through Proposition 218 procedure where property owners are sent ballots to vote on whether they will allow assessments to go over the maximum established amount. Now, with this year's report, the proposed assessments for Zone A will essentially stay the same. They do decrease by approximately 38 cents per year per parcel. In Zone B, those assessments would decrease by $31.90 per unit. And Zone C will be increasing by $2,226 per unit. And this is due to no contributions from the reserves, as was done last year, and correction of land uses. With tonight being the third and final step in the annual process, council should receive this report, provide any comments to staff, open the public hearing and take the comments from the public, close the public hearing and approve the resolution attached to the staff report that approves the engineer's report and authorizes the assessments to be levied. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Brunswick. Any questions, comments from the council before we open the public protest hearing?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I do have a
Mr.
couple questions.
Mr. Craig.
Yes, thank you for your report there. A couple of items I just want to clarify. In looking at Zone A, which is the Birch Street. When this was brought up last time, how, I can't remember, 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, or whatever, but as you pointed out, we made some amendments to it. And at that time, I did go out and take a look at that particular location. I failed to do it in preparation for this meeting, but what I looked at out there were a couple of dead trees, a whole lot of weeds, bark in the gutter, and that type of thing. But correct me if I'm wrong, city staff, city public works staff actually does the maintenance on that, the landscape portion of that area?
That's my understanding, yes.
I'm sorry?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. I also recently went through the last 3 years of the time cards of the city staff on public works. While I was not specifically looking for something that was associated with Zone A, the Birch Street Village, nothing popped out particularly on those time cards that showed me that in fact, public works staff was spending time. So do you ever see those reports to know how those time cards or how do you capture you're shaking your head, Marty.
No, he doesn't see anything, any
I-
time cards or
okay.
anything like that.
So you're capturing the amount of time public works staff is actually working on that area of the city, or how are you capturing them to be able to reconcile your budget?
They do track their time.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, they track their hours worked within these individual districts.
they do track those on a separate
On
time
like-
card or?
Yeah, on a spreadsheet.
I'm sorry,
On a spreadsheet, they track their time in those individual districts on a spreadsheet,
okay,
and then we would take that.
okay, so you are capturing the actual costs of labor associated
Correct.
with that.
Did-
And if
did
I
we share
understand
that?
then,
Yeah, that does go to John.
Oh, that does get, I apologize. That does get shared with the city engineer, that information.
that does get.
I didn't think Ian in particular saw it, but it is seen by the city engineer. Yes,
Okay,
what-
that's what I'm
Joe
trying
just
to ensure,
confirmed.
if somebody was actually capturing the actual labor and time associated with this. Because you're indicating the fees will be the same for zone A,
Yeah, they decrease slightly, but they're essentially the same.
and you've got a budget carry forward here of a little over, nearly $1,000. So, okay, thank you. On zone B, I didn't hear you said you had an increase per unit. I didn't quite hear. No?
I apologize for not speaking into the mic. Zone B, we anticipate those fees will decrease by $31.90 per unit.
Okay. And when you say per unit, define the per unit for me. would you?
Per parcel.
I'm sorry?
per parcel.
Per parcel?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
So Walmart actually has, if I recall, it's been years since that went through the planning commission, some 5 or 6 individual parcels. Is that correct?
yeah, I believe so, yes. Actually, we only show 2 parcels,
How many?
2.
2 parcels is all. So that must be where McDonald's is and then the rest of the facility.
That's correct. Yes, McDonald's and Walmart as well.
Okay, and then on zone B, zone B. I think you were making reference to, and where I was picking it up was the, zone C, Zone C. You made mention of an increase of about 2K per parcel or per unit,
That's
and
correct.
that's a parcel per parcel as
Yes.
well.
Yes,
And how many parcels down there?
there are 9 parcels.
9 parcels total. Okay, and those are all, Basin Street goes by a different name now. I forget, but we know it publicly as Basin Street Properties. Okay, so that's all, it's same ownership for all of those 9 parcels.
No, there are several parcels owned by California Land Invest.
Right.
And there is a parcel by Snow Mountain Properties, Martins, I apologize if I'm butchering the name, Martins, Lathian. And then City of Willows also has 2 parcels, part of the Zone C.
All right, very good. That's all I had. Thank you very.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you,
further
Mr. Mayor.
questions or comments in reference to this item before we open the public protest, gentlemen?
I just want to kind of support Forrest in the idea that accountability for the fees. Yeah, we would not want to become to a point where these fees be just automatic. So that if they in fact change dramatically, we could adjust that up or down. So that these people know that we're a very credible financial institution when it comes to charging these assessments or fees. So thank you. And let's make sure we can answer those questions anytime we need to within a fairly short period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bud. Vice Mayor Hudson.
I just have one quick question. I'm looking at Zone C and the number of units that are assigned to some of these is a half a unit. Where that's not on any of the other, on none of the other parcels does it say half a unit except when it's involving Zone C. Is there a reason why that would be a half a unit and how does that affect what they're being charged?
Interesting.
So
I'm looking at page, I think it's page 20 of your table 1, page 20.
page 20.
Yes, sir. It's
And
the-
in the center of page 21 as well, developed parcel vacant.
oh, I
Right,
missed
so-
that. I apologize.
Typically, the way it's shown, for half unit,
Okay.
it's a vacant, but it's developable parcel. We would charge 1 unit for a fully developed parcel and 0 units for undeveloped parcel.
Okay.
And that's the way that, yeah, that's why it's shown that way.
Oh, perfect. I'm sorry, I kind of glanced over where the 1 unit had a 6 instead of a 3. So that was my bad, the small print. My eyes were not focusing on that. So that's all I had. I was sorry. Putting you on the spot.
Okay, anything further, Evan?
No, sir. That's all I got.
Any further questions or comments from the council? Nothing further. Yeah, I just, Ian, thank you. I know John compiled a very, a very thorough, detailed report. I appreciate, all of his work, that he does each and every year in reference to the, landscape and lighting special assessment districts. It's always good news when there's a decrease of any kind. It's a slight decrease, but for Zone A and Zone B, there are decreases. And since I've been on the council, there have been far more decreases than there have been increases, which is always good news. I just want to reiterate for Zone C, and is well detailed in the report, that the bulk of those expenses relate to weed abatement. And if you've looked at it, there's a lot of weeds. It's a wet year, a lot of weeds last year as well. And also the water retention basin, or I know that the public works staff, the superintendent down there all the time, pumping water out of that water retention basin. So, from my perspective, the landscape and lighting special assessment districts are well maintained by our staff, and I'm glad that with good line of questioning in reference to tracking the costs those expenses are well tracked within the Public Works Department, and these are solid numbers. So, and I know, Ian, you're pinch hitting for John, our city engineer tonight. So thank you very much. And I know you didn't prepare the report, but you're here representing the firm. So thank you.
Thank you,
So-
Mr. Mayor.
So understand that you weren't the author of the report you're presenting tonight. So very good. So if there are no further questions or comments from the council, we will open the,
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I do have a quick
yeah,
question.
Mr. Sprague.
Do the
yes.
property owners all get notified of this meeting? Or do you just rely on notification in the newspaper? Or do they actually receive a notice in the mail?
Unfortunately, I'm not sure, and I would have to follow up on that. It's my understanding that they do receive direct notification. Anytime, there would be a hearing related to any type of special assessment. But I would need to follow up, just to clarify that and make sure I get you the correct answer there.
Okay, looks like maybe I've got an answer from either
I-
the attorney or the
Counselor.
city
I would
manager.
assume they would be notified, yeah.
Yes.
We will confirm and
Oh,
get
we can
back to you,
confirm.
but because it is part of the landscape lighting district has to follow the Prop 218 process for, because people are voting to assess themselves, right? We're not exacting a tax, it's a fee that they've agreed to pay. So we're pretty sure they have to be notified, but I will confirm that and send that to council.
Okay, thank you much.
Uh,
That's all, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Mr. Sprague. Each and every year, all of the parcel owners of record on the county of Glenn tax rolls are notified of this public protest hearing for Proposition 218, yes. So the answer would be yes. Any further questions or comments from the council before we open the public protest hearing? Hearing none, the time is 6:33 PM. We'll open the public protest hearing at this time in reference to item 6A, the landscaping and lighting special assessment district authorization to levy assessments. Are there any public comments this evening in reference to this item? Any public comments? It's still 6:33 PM. We'll close the public protest hearing in reference to this matter at this time. Pleasure of the council in reference to this item 6A. There is a resolution attached.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move that we accept and adopt a resolution approving the annual engineer's report confirming annual assessment diagram and the annual assessment amounts and the authorizing the levy and collection of assessments for fiscal year 24-25 for the City of Willows Landscaping and Lighting Assessment District pursuant to Landscaping and Lighting Act of 1972.
Councilmember Thomas has moved to approve item 6A as presented and as outlined in the resolution that Councilmember Thomas just read the title of. Is there a second?
Second.
Vice Mayor Hudson has the second. Further discussion? Mr. City Clerk, this will be a roll call vote, please.
Okay, Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Sprague,
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hudson,
Yes.
Mayor Hanson.
Aye. Thank you, Amos. Matter carries unanimously 5-0. I keep looking over here to the right, Amos, because I'm used to being over there.
Yeah.
So forgive me if it's distracting. Okay. All right. Moving on to item 6B, master fee schedule update. We're going to hold a public hearing in reference to this matter tonight and consider approval of the proposed update to the master fee schedule, also known as the schedule. Before we turn this over to Community Development Services Director Joe Bencourt, the City Manager Marty Brown, do you have any comments?
Just quickly, I just want to say this is another project that's been a few minutes in coming for sure. And so we're really pleased to be able to bring the master fee schedule. It has not been, there's some pretty seriously outdated fees and it hasn't been updated in quite some time in this manner. And I think it'll go a long way to helping to bolster the city's general fund. So we're really enthusiastic about that. And this project was funded with ARPA funds. That's it. Over to you.
Funded with what? I'm sorry.
ARPA funds.
ARPA.
Okay, Marty, thank you. Joe,
Joe.
good evening, Joe.
Good evening, council members. So as Marty said, these fees haven't been updated in a long time. I think the most recent ones, excuse me, were in 2015, and that's related to planning permits and some encroachment permit updates. I've got Pretty Patel is going to be doing a presentation for us from Wildan. That was our contractor. Her along with Tony Thrasher were the two consultants that we worked with to update this master fee schedule. And just to kind of go over a general overview before Pretty takes it over. The goal of the fee schedule is to recuperate fees for specific applications to take the load off of the general fund. If you want to go build a house, the goal is that the developer of that house pays the fees so that the rest of the population doesn't have to pick up those fees. So just looking at it from a perspective of these fees are going to come from somewhere no matter what. And basically all we're trying to do is put the cost of the burden on the person that is applying for the fee. So that way the rest of the general fund doesn't have to pick up that cost. The fees that we looked at in this were specific to business licenses, parks and rec, building, planning, fire, and engineering. And we made this, wanted it to be a living document and kind of follow that we would look at this at least yearly and adopt it prior to July of each year. We've got a 2-month waiting period, so we would come to the council sometime in March, April and get it adopted, and then fees would come in for July 1st. And we would update these based on additional time studies. So as we look at time and figure out if we're way off on a fee and we think we need to update our time study, we can do that, or we can adjust it via CPI increase. So those are the goals. And we can also intermittently adjust this at any point in time. If we see that a fee is not consistent, we don't have to wait for an annual review. That can be brought forward at any time. So with that general background, I'll pass it off to Pretty, who's going to give you a presentation and a little more in-depth look at how we develop these fees and the cost recovery aspect of it.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. What were the names again? I'm sorry.
Pretty Patel and Tony Thrasher. Pretty Patel is going to be doing.
Pretty and Tony?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Yep.
Pretty, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Pretty Patel and I'm from Wilden Financial Services. So I'm going to give a presentation for the fee study. Next slide, please. So what are user fees? They provide a private benefit with limited or no community benefit. The state law requires that individual use of the service must be voluntary and fees must be reasonably relate to the services provided. Fee levels and cost recovery determined through city council fee adoption, and they do not include development impact fees, utility rates, taxes, and other fees such as that. Next slide, please. So why update user fees? Subsidies and services impact the general fund. Private and specific benefit services are subsidized by unobligated funding sources, reduces the ability to fund general and community benefits. Decreased department funding typically results in understaffing and reduces service quality. Cost recovery knowledge and planning provides a clarity of pressures on city resources, enables city to strategize and set fees to benefit of the city and community, and state requirements for reasonable cost-based fees. Next slide, please. So the user fee objectives and steps were to determine the full cost of providing the services or programs. We reviewed the fee schedules based on service delivery, identified potential new fees and added new fees that are not currently collected, reduce or remove any fees no longer in use by using the fully burdened rates to calculate the full cost recovery. Also, update fees for services based on cost analysis. Incorporate or establish cost recovery goals. Subsidies allow access to services and facilitate compliance. Also identify appropriate fee levels that enhance reasonability and applicability, maintain consistency with local policies and objectives, and maintain legal compliance with state law. Next slide, please. The scope of this study included the following departments and divisions: business license, parks, building, planning, fire, and engineering. And we reviewed and calculated what the cost was of providing this services in those departments and divisions. The primary types of data used were the expenditure data, staffing structures, central service and indirect overhead, productive billable hours, time estimates to complete tasks, and city department input, feedback, and policies. There was staff support throughout the whole process for essential to ensure analysis fidelity. Next slide, please. So the next slide, this shows the summary steps of the study. The first step was the model development, which was the data collection, build the fee model, and overhead and fully burdened hourly rate calculations. Then there was the cost analysis where we did staff meetings, updated the fee schedules, and collected time data on each personnel that's involved for the fees to calculate what the full cost was to provide that service. The next step was to set the cost recovery based on those full cost calculations. Then we created the fee study report, and now we're at the last step, which is update the fee adoption at the public hearing. Next slide, please. So the first department was the business license. That was time-based cost analysis. The analysis found that most fees are collected and set below the full cost of providing services, and all 8 fees are to increase. Next slide. The parks fees are most of the fees are use of government property and should be set based on policy, usage, and market factors. There was time-based analysis on 3 of the fees. There would be an increase to 4 fees, 2 new fees, individual swimming pool use, and a tennis and pickleball court reservation fees would be added, and the other fees would remain as currently set. The building fees were time-based cost analysis also. The analysis found that the most fees are collecting set below the full cost of providing the service. There would be an increase to 19 fees. 5 fees would decrease. 1 new fee, additional inspection fee would be added. 19 fees would remain as currently set, and the average fee change would be around 30% for current fees. A new building permit table was structured to use as a valuation-based approach. The planning fees are a time-based cost analysis. Analysis found that the current fees are not completely in line with the full cost of providing service. There would be an increase to 11 fees. 6 fees would change from a flat fee amount to a flat permit plus a CRA deposit. And a CRA is a cost recovery agreement. 4 fees would change from a consultant fee to a flat permit plus a CRA deposit. 5 fees would decrease. 3 new fees would be added, and 5 fees would remain as currently set. The fire fees were also a time-based cost analysis. The analysis found that the current fees are underfunding the cost for most of the services. There would be an increase to 5 fees, 2 new fees. The new business fire inspection and re-inspection would be added, and the average fee change would be an increase of 59% for the flat fees. And for engineering fees, staff is recommending a decrease to the civil field inspection deposit major from 4% construction cost to 2%. And there was a time-based cost analysis for the encroachment permit and is recommended to increase to full cost recovery, and the other fees are to remain as currently set. And some policy considerations are that individuals or groups who receive private benefit from the service should pay 100% of the cost. In certain situations, subsidization is an effective public policy tool to encourage participation, ensure compliance when cost is prohibitive to residents, and promote access to services. Recommend that the city utilize an inflation factor to annually adjust the fees based on CPI, MOU, or another factor, and it is recommended to do another comprehensive analysis every 5 years. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Pretty. Council members, questions, comments?
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Sprague.
Making reference to, I forget what page it was, page number 2, does not include development impact fees. So we did not look at any development actual costs associated with development. That probably has to be done through a different nexus study. Is that
Correct. Yeah, it has its own separate process, so they were not examined in this fee, as they do require a new nexus study and other additional public notices.
Okay, all right, thank you. Also, on page 8 of the presentation, your license fees, business license fees. A couple of years ago, we engaged HDL from Los Angeles to be able to take a look at those license fees and collect additional fees if they were not being paid and so on. I'm sure you've got, and all the data that you've given in here, 2-point font of, so can you tell us what those license fees are actually? Are we anticipating that those are going to increase? And if so, give me the breakdown on how we're calculating those fees.
So the business license fees are a time study. So basically, we look at the personnel involved in providing a business license. On the initial application, you've got a lot more time involved on that because goes through the planning department review, the building department review, fire review, other things of that nature. And then we charge out the fully burdened rate of those hours spent. So say I spend a half hour on it, planning spends 15 minutes on it. We basically just multiply that by the hourly rate of those employees or contractors and come up with a flat fee. We eliminated the tiered system, which was previously, if you were below 1 to 5 employees, you paid a lesser amount. If you had more employees, you paid more of amount. And that was just to be more in line with the actual cost recovery. So we've gone to a flat fee of every new application, costs the same amount of money, and renewals now cost the same amount of money as well. So it's all based off of a time study and recovery and the amount of time it takes to do that for staff.
My recollection is the last time I looked at this, we had three tiers. However many employees, $25, and then $30 and $35. So if my memory is serving me well, how much are those fees going to be now compared to those? I'm sure, again, it's in the data, and I apologize for not finding
No,
it.
it's fine. And so it's not a tiered system anymore. Every application is just based off the time it takes staff. So every new application is $110, and then the renewal fee is $60.
The renewal fee is $60.
Yep.
So that's gone up. If my memory serves me, that's gone up by 100%.
Yeah, I believe renewal fees, were based off of the amount of employees, and I think were the original cost of the amount of employees previously.
Okay.
So if it was 1 to 5 employees and it cost $30, it was $30 annually. If it was over 15 employees and cost $100, or if it cost $90, then you pay $90 annually. So I would say it's more just based off the time it takes to process those applications.
Okay. All right. Last question on page 13, we make reference to, and this is the first time I've seen this particular, staff is recommending a decrease in civil engineering field inspection deposit from 4% to 2%. So that's the deposit that an applicant, it's not the amount that the city engineer is going to actually receive that we're changing by this. It's the application's fees that come out.
Correct. All of the CIA, the cost recovery agreements, you'll see a lot of them in planning as well. What we had them do were estimates of time. Some of those are harder than others. In talking with our city engineer, he felt that 2% would be more in line. We're trying to get the most realistic number possible so we can have the least burden on the applicant of having to pay that money. But basically, we'll take that deposit and then we will look at the actual build and we will bill against that deposit and then issue a refund, or if costs exceed that deposit, we would ask for additional money to cover that cost. So it's look at it as a down payment deposit for the actual work that's going to be performed by the city engineer or our planning
Okay.
contract staff.
This is field inspection deposit. That would be then independent of the plan check fee and those
Correct.
other things.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. Being a developer, it always seemed that the plan check fee and so on, by comparison to the actual field time, was a little bit upside down. But I'm assuming that
your process is doing this is kind of brought balance to that, is what I understand.
Absolutely. And the beauty about being able to make this and update this is as we develop better systems and looking at these numbers, if we feel that 4%, it's, we're making people do too big of a deposit, we can adjust that, down the road. Or if we're off on things, we can adjust those, but it is a deposit. Obviously we want to be as accurate as possible, but the amount's either refunded. Sometimes you go through projects where there's 9 plan reviews, and that, as we go along and see that that's happening, we would know that the deposit's not keeping up with the amount of the actual work being completed. And in that case, we would ask for an additional deposit to cover future costs.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yep. I think that's all I had, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sprague. Any further questions, comments? Councilmember Bodden?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I look at the parks on page 9 and I think about those circumstances that occur in our business of the city wherein nothing fits the description of the activity. Is it possible to incorporate into this fee program a general ability to say, if nothing else fits, then this would be the fee, or we have the ability to make a fee up if somebody comes up with something that's outside the lines. So that's one. I call that a general use fee structure, maybe with some parameters. The next one is the most important one, in my humble opinion, which is called policy considerations. We know from all of the research and all the experience we have that the way that the economic development is occurring across this country in many areas is through very flexible and very creative considerations given to developers and projects and programs and others who bring big resources to the table. And I just want to make sure that we have, and it says we do, a clear understanding that we have the ability to say to someone when the value is significant that we can do this way, whatever that may be. Is that the way this is? I mean, is that what this says?
So this does not have any specific language. Those things would probably be more appropriately addressed in the municipal code update if we wanted to allow exceptions to our master fee schedule and then establish a process to allow those exceptions, whether it be an application above, a building project above $5 million, maybe have fees reduced.
I
I'm not
want it
sure
to
on
be
that, but-
undefined. I
What's
want
that?
you to be able to sit across the table from a corporate America and say, we can do that.
That'd probably be illegal for me to do that, but it'd be things that we could, the fees are set in a way to be fair to everyone. So it's based on the time that we would do that. And that's why we use percentages on plan check and things of that nature. When it comes to planning fees, if there was a wish to do that, I would have to look into how the appropriate way would be to do that.
Well, and again, as we move forward and we develop a new, bigger, more powerful Willows, I can tell you that some of the things that are done is waiving fees entirely for development.
Yep.
Providing tax incentives wherever the city or your municipality has influence over a tax, waiving tax fees, and in some cases subsidizing activities that get the thing off the ground, maybe infrastructure development. So I just want to be able to do that when the balance sheet says we're ahead when it's all over, way ahead.
So, Councilmember Bodden, any applicant can always ask to have their fees waived, and then that would be a council decision. I would say, it's a slippery slope. It's hard for me to imagine what those circumstances would be, because it becomes precedent setting, and then everybody comes and says, well, you did it for him, why aren't you doing it for me? So I would just caution doing that in the future. But that said, anybody can ask for it, and the council can review it as an agenda item and make that decision. And that's always possible. And we certainly can bolster the language in the municipal code to make it very explicitly clear that that's a possibility as well, like Joe was stating.
And what I would not ever want to hear is, we can't do that because, and then quote scripture or quote some rule or book. 'Cause
We're not going to quote scripture.
I
We're
didn't mean
definitely
to
not
say
going to do that. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, okay, well, again, if you study these communities that are really out there,
Yep.
they are doing very creative and successful long-term things to grow their communities for
So-
the benefit of the citizens.
Some of the things that you can do that are more creative is with our own property. When the city owns the property, you can enter into an exclusive right to negotiate, and you can do all sorts of different kinds of deals, like write down the value of the property in order to invite,
There you go.
investment. There's all sorts of things that are easier to do when it's our property. it's hard to impose that on a private property owner, of course, but, so I think that's some of the, perhaps that is some of the deals that you've been hearing about are those kinds of things where property is owned by a city or a public entity, and they are, attracting private investment, and then they're developing an exclusive right to negotiate and an exclusive development agreement.
Ex-
So that's something we could do with our own property a
Yeah.
little more easily than with someone.
And we
private.
could buy land in front of a development and then own it when they came to the table. So there's ways. The next one is, are these rates comparable as you see them unfolding within the surrounding area?
Yes, they are. Yes, they
Okay.
are. They are comparable. We had, Willdan do a comparison study. I think we picked, correct me if I'm wrong, pretty about 6 different fees to look at in various categories from parks to business licenses. And I feel like we were in the ballpark with all of those surrounding communities of Orland, Corning, Chico, Calusa.
We're not allowed to make a profit.
And that, I just
That's
want
too
to
bad.
add to.
Which rule is that?
That's the cost
Government.
recovery and not the revenue generating.
Right.
But I'll add on the cost recovery piece of it. We've set our standard at, 100% cost recovery of real staff time at weighted rate. So a way to quickly reduce rates around the board, say if we had additional revenue coming from other sources, is we could set certain departments, say building, to a 75% cost recovery rate, 60%, which would lower all those fees down to a 60% for the user. The remainder of the fees, of course, for our time would be picked up by a general fund, but the fees for developers, say if you did it within building or across the board, we can adjust the actual cost. So you look at these as more max limits of what we can exceed for our time currently. And municipalities with a healthier general fund, and you do see it, will, completely waive business fees, completely waive, planning fees, or anywhere, at 50% or in between. So there is the ability to do that, go down from here.
Very good. My last question is as much, I do not want to see this, but have you or could we see the raw materials of the cost analysis that result in these conclusions? You've seen it all, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you've touched the numbers and
I mean, we put in, yeah,
followed the flow.
Yep.
And if I wanted to see one of them, like the cost analysis for building permits, I could see it
yeah, I don't think there'd be any
from
issue
A
with
to Z. Thank you.
Yep.
I don't want to see it.
It's tedious.
I just want to know it.
Anything further, David?
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes, for building, for planning, and for engineering, they're pretty much the ones that are dominating the cost recovery agreement, CRA. In this study, did they determine what the hourly rate should be? for
So
each of
the-
those
so
units?
Yeah, the hourly rate is based off of our fully burdened cost for staff, which includes all of our overhead. CRA, as it relates to consultants, we pay flat fees, from $180 an hour, say, for a planner. So those rates are just taken straight out of the contract and what we're currently being charged. And then what we have the contractors do, especially in planning, is, what does this particular task take you to get done? How many hours does this take you to get done? And then those are multiplied out, and that determines that deposit amount.
Cool, and we're working to make sure we have a good analysis and a good ledger for our depositors, so we know how much they spent, where we spent their money on.
Absolutely. The great thing about our contractors, Coastland being included, is we get a very detailed breakdown of the cost. So we will be able to provide that. At the end of the day, what we want to give them is a full receipt of the hours worked from our contractor, which we get in our billing anyways, but summarize that per project for them, so they know exactly what they paid for and what those hours went into.
Okay. So I'm gonna pick on planning at this point in time. On the fee sheet for page 27, tentative parcel maps, 4 or fewer lots, $285 plus the CRA. Suggested permit fees, $325. But then it's parcel maps, 4 or fewer lots per lot, then the per lot charge, tentative subdivision maps, vesting tentative maps, final maps. So if I have a tentative parcel map, do I then also have to pay the final map? Because I'm not sure why we have these listed this way.
I do not know that. I can ask our planner on that question and get back to you on that.
Does Pretty know?
I do not know.
It would be specific, so we had, our planner review these fees and make sure everything was in line, but yeah, I don't know the specific planning answer to that
Because
question.
it starts to get confusing if I come in to do a parcel map for 4 lots. And it says I have this fee, then I have a final map because I'm taking my tentative map to a final map. Do I have to pay that again?
What we'd like to also do is develop kind of a checkbox of the fees. So as the person is applying, we give them,
Because this is the kind of stuff that upsets folks. It says, well,
Yeah,
okay,
we-
this, now you want this.
Yep.
And that, and so then. Because from planning, you have a fee for the tentative map, but then you also have an engineering fee with a CRA. So do we take one CRA for all of them?
the CRAs would be determined per need. So if it's an engineering,
So if I'm submitting a tentative map that's gonna need, and I'm gonna build a house.
Yep.
And I wanna do the planning for the blocks.
Yep.
And then I'm gonna go through engineering to do the map check and all the rest of that stuff. I have one cost recovery account. And it's this much.
you would have a cost recovery agreement through planning. And if you got to the next step where that went to the engineering for final check, you would do another cost recovery agreement. And the reason that would be to, number one, protect the city from, if the applicant, the fee is designed to get the money up front. So if we do the work and our consultant does the work, we're going to get billed for that no matter what. So if we don't collect this fee up front, we can get left out to dry and the city's picking up that tab. But the amount of hours and the time of work necessary and the billable hours are all different between the planning and the engineering. So we figure that having a specific amount set for planning and then another amount set for engineering gives a more accurate picture of the final cost and what it's going to be. I mean, we can lump it together as a single fee, but they would still be determined separately.
Well, I understand how it's gonna be determined, but I think if you're gonna do multiple cost recovery agreements, we're not doing our customer any favors. I think it'd be better if we had a checklist.
Yeah,
Here's-
understood. Yes.
Here's where it is, this.
On the agreement itself. Yeah,
On the
no,
agreement
absolutely.
itself, Because
Okay.
if you keep coming back, says I need another nickel, I need another dime,
No, then totally understood. So if,
that's not good customer service.
nope. And if a project is going to involve multiple CRAs, then that is what we would do. We would
If I'm
execute
submitting
that
a
agreement.
tentative parcel map,
It's going to go to
getting
that.
to a final.
Absolutely. Yep.
And it's gonna need a plan check. All of that. So I would like us to have a plan, program that's set up, so they come in for this is what we need, and it's all up front, and everybody knows that. And at the end of the day, if they don't do all of that stuff, they get a refund. That's how I would like to.
Absolutely. We can.
We do have a
accomplish that.
draft cost recovery agreement that is, I think, significantly different from the prior agreement. We're just about ready to finalize it and take it on are we already taking it on a test run?
Yeah, we're right there with it. We're actually working in the engineering fees to the planning part of it. So that way we have one agreement for both of those.
So we are trying to make it as explicit and transparent as possible, and we're hoping, Councilmember Thomas, you'll help us take that for a test drive, that new agreement, and just see, how it works out and what's working, what's not.
Be happy
then
to
you can
do
yell and
whatever I
scream at
can
us
to
when you
assist
get-
this process, because how we make it simple and how we make it accommodating from, you got a project? Great. What is it? How can we help get to the finish? You're gonna have to go through these steps. And this is what it is, the cost recovery, it's for your benefit, so you have to pay the freight. And here it is. Caveat, they can always overrun that
Mhm.
based on plan check, or whatever they're planning on doing. But I'd like it to be as simple and straightforward as upfront.
We were hoping that you were gonna come in and buy Basin Street and try building a subdivision and do a tentative map, a final map, a subdivision map.
Well, I'd be happy to
could
do
see how that worked
You know,
out.
Ink writes on rubber real well, so I could write those checks.
Well, and I'd like to add to Rick's point, and that is that I think number 2 of our list of goals and objectives going forward is friendly relationships with business. So as Rick is saying, and I know you all know this, but it's the application that's going to be the test, is that when there's surprises, when there's, steps that were not anticipated, it doesn't come over friendly. So the friendly is the goal. We're helping you. And I know I'm repeating, but That's really, all of this has to come out, like the person on the other end feels we were their friend and their ally and we helped them. That's how these rates should flow. And I hear you saying and nodding, and I know you're going to do it. So just make it happen.
We want to be,
That's it,
yeah,
Mr.
not a
Mayor.
barrier
Okay.
at all.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Vice Mayor Hudson?
I got a couple of questions, just kind of looking at the master fee schedule real quick. One of them's pretty easy. I noticed the softball lights and then tennis court reservation. Now, are you saying for the tennis courts, you're gonna start charging people to use them $50, or is that like, hey, we're gonna host a makeshift tournament at the tennis courts and we want to rent them out for the day?
Yeah, it would be, so the tennis courts would remain free to the public, and then it would just be a reservation fee
Okay.
per court.
Okay. And then one thing on that is for the softball lights, and I believe part of the Sycamore Park rebuild that you guys have for the grant, there's lights going in on the tennis courts as well, or is it just the pathways?
I believe on the tennis courts as well.
Okay. If we decide that we want to put operated lights on those, would these fees go away then, or would there still be a? how would
No,
that-
those fees, we would still list the fees, however they're based off of the coin op, right? So they wouldn't be going
Okay.
through the office. So we would still have them in there just as a part of being a fee, but we would just list whatever that fee ends up being at the machine or how we're controlling it at
Right.
that
Yeah,
point. So
because
it'll
it'll
still
be
be
have to
listed.
pay probably at that time.
Yeah.
Point up, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, as I was going through, I was kind of curious, it says window change out like for like, and it says $119. Is that per window?
That would
Or is
be,
that per like permit that you pull to replace the window?
I believe it's just a single permit to pull to replace windows like for like
Gotcha,
and not
so-
expand them, not a per window fee.
Cause I was just thinking I have a really small window, everyone does in their bathroom, right? And I'm like, that's gonna cost more than the window itself.
So, yeah, no, it would be
Okay.
for all windows replaced in a like for like
Okay.
manners under one permit.
And then when I was looking down at the residential solar, it says less than 10,000 or 10 kilowatts, $450. It says resident solar more than 10 kilowatts, $450 plus $15 per kilowatt above 15 kilowatts. So shouldn't that say $15 per kilowatt above 10 kilowatts?
Yes, that may be a mistake that we need to adjust.
It's on the fee schedule and their building permit fees about 3/4 of the way down.
Is your page
Just-
number?
What page?
101 of the entire packet. Can I read my mind, Marty? It's the page that I'm looking at.
I don't have it listed by those
Um,
pages. I have-
So when you're looking at the master fee schedule, it's just above the other building fees.
That would make sense that is wrong. So I will
Okay.
definitely double check that. Yeah.
I just didn't know if I was gonna get, 5 kilowatts for free there or.
Yeah, yeah. I doubt there's a variance range where you're not charged extra per kilowatt. So
Right.
that looks like it is a mistake.
Okay. And then on the sewer connection fees, did those go into the sewer enterprise fund, or those go directly to?
So the sewer connection fees, just to be totally upfront, were not examined at all. They're just listed on the master fee schedule. So these are pulled straight from what they were before.
Okay.
And all of those, yeah, sewer connection fees would, I believe, go into the sewer fund.
Okay.
Yes.
And then,
Yeah.
how are those, so because I'm looking at it, I'm seeing a hotel motel with restaurant facilities. One room equals one, and it's $1,250. Then I go down to a convalescent hospital and it's a per room charge. And each bed is a half, and that's only a 625 charge. So my question there is convalescent hospital's room is those are usually ran at a higher capacity throughout the entire year. To where a hotel is probably ran at, each room's probably used about 50% of the year. So how come the facilities that are probably using more of our sewer pipelines are getting a lower rate than the facilities that are using less of those, and how that calculations come up with?
So I do not have an answer for that. In order to examine the sewer rate fees, and the connection fees was not included in this study.
Mhm.
This data and how it was determined was literally just pulled from a resolution of the previous adopting council, and I believe it was pretty old.
Okay.
So those fees weren't included. Just wanted to be upfront and get them on this fee schedule. So that is something that they were not examined. They were literally just pulled and put on this as part of the fee schedule.
Okay, and then kind of going towards what Councilmember Vaughn had stated earlier on the fire inspection fees for new business fire inspections. Can we give them the first inspection free as sort of a customer service? Hey, we want your business in this town and we're hoping that you bring us more than the $100 we're trying to charge you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Did I say that right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, no, we can give you, if you
mean,
pass on the first, you're good, and re-inspections would be $100 a piece after that.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, that's just my 2 cents on it. I mean, it's kind of like a, yes, we want your business, you know, sort of. And it's, I understand it's not a lot, right? $100 when you're talking some of these $4,000, you know, CRA expenses. It's not a lot, but
It's a bonus for getting it
it
right the
might be
first time.
something if it's a small, you know, smaller shop or something like that, that they're trying to open up, things like that. So,
I mean, certainly that can always be done.
okay.
It would, to me, though, from, you know, looking at it more like from an outside perspective, would beg the question, well, why don't we do that with any other number of permits that a business would have to pull? Why don't we give the first building inspection, you know, a free, I mean, you could go anywhere with that, right? And the whole purpose of updating the master fee schedule is to bring it into a place where we're competitive and we're increasing general fund, you know, general fund monies without making a profit, as I stated earlier,
Right.
just like breaking even here. We're just trying to break even. So I would just, you know, certainly the council can do, it's your discretion. I would just say that that would beg another question though about what about all the other permits that people get for the first time?
Right, and I understand that, and my 2 cents on that would be that, it's fire safety is a public service, and I think that that would just be more of a public service side of the fire department. But like I said, that's one person out of five that gonna make
I
the
vote
decision.
for yes, waiving the fire fee too.
So that was, yeah, so I was just asking the question, you know, he was discussing waiving certain different things, and I thought that was
You hook 'em,
not a
get 'em in the
huge,
door.
nothing huge, but you know, it is, you know, we are giving, you know, it is something, I guess is the best way to put it, so. But that is all my notes, so I am done, Mayor, so you can have at it.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Yeah, I just, yeah, Evan, several of your questions were along my line of questioning. They've all been answered. When in reference to window permit fee, I was hoping it was $119 per permit, not per window. So, yeah. That probably should be clarified a little clearer, possibly in the document,
Okay.
maybe, because it was a little confusing. And really, I just, you know, and staff was charged with simplifying the process, as Councilmember Thomas, you know, mentioned, and Mr. Bowden as well, and Mr. Hudson. But yeah, I'm very pleased to see that you're working diligently on simplifying the overall process. As we know and is indicated in the staff report, the master fee schedule has not been updated in decades, since the 1990s at least. And, you know, the cost of doing business obviously has gone up since then, and has been well stated here. We're not earning profits off of this fee schedule. This is the, you know, the cost of covering staff's time for providing the services at a private benefit, primarily. But no, I appreciate the report out from Will and Pretty. Thank you very much for your report this evening and for presenting this evening. Like I started to say, I'm really happy that staff is working diligently on simplifying the process, and I urge you to keep going down that line. And there's a rollout ready to roll almost on that.
Yeah, very
Yeah,
close.
very good, very good. When do you figure to pull the trigger on that?
Well, put me on a deadline. I'll give it, when Marty gets back.
Okay, okay, very good. That's good. That's good. But you know, and it's also encouraging to find that a number of the fees have decreased. Not everything's increasing. Some are increasing, some are decreasing, some are remaining the same. It's very encouraging. So, but that's really all I had to say. Evan, did you have something
I
to say?
actually had two quick questions. Do I think we kind of discussed maybe a fee packet for certain projects? Like I know, you guys have one for putting like a shade up or you know, attaching a porch to the house. You guys have a little packet that you hand out, kind of gives the specifications and then kind of has a schedule of what the cost would be. Are you guys plan on doing that for simpler items like single family dwellings? Sorry.
Yeah, we also want to, we're looking into kind of, Orland has the ADU pre-made plans, things like that. So, building this package, and we can also, with the fees and the totals as we list them, yeah, we can make those. We've got our standard design specs for like the, encroachment permit items that we do. So those are things we can look into and make happen for sure.
Okay. And then the other one was, on the CRA fees.
Mhm.
Are those refunded if the
Yes.
entire amount isn't? Okay.
Yep, it's
I don't know if I missed that part during the presentation or when you're
yep.
talking to somebody else.
They're tracked against actual cost and what we'll
Okay.
be able to hand as a receipt at the end of it. Yeah, either, and additional money can be asked too. If it's some projects, like I said, if they don't have a good engineer, they do 10 plan checks, it's going to be over the estimated amount of hours, most likely.
Got
So,
Okay. Perfect. Like I said, I'm not from the background, so I'm asking the questions from just a simple standpoint. So, thank you.
And finally, just want to thank Wilden and staff for, I mean, this is an extremely comprehensive user fee study. I know a lot of time and effort has gone into this. Appreciate your due diligence, really do. So long overdue, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. So with that, if the council members do not have any further questions or comments.
No,
Rick?
actually, I do. Kind of listening to what David and Rick both questioned kind of prompts some of my memory bank in regard to some of this stuff. So, Joe, the CRA is kind of synonymous with what we used to call a pass-through account, is that
Correct.
right? That's our new term for that. One of the things that frustrates a lot of builder developers, me being one, was that we set up a pass-through account. It's based on estimated time. And I never really got an estimated time of hours associated with a particular task.
Mhm.
It's just a fee associated with it. Excuse me. But my frustration was, and the frustration of other builder developers, is you turn in your plans, whether it's for residential house construction or development fees, streets, curbs, gutters, et cetera. You get your plans back, they're redlined, you gotta fix this, you gotta address that, and so on. So I take it back, the developer takes it back to his engineer, spends time redrawing those plans, and then submit them again. And 9 times out of 10, oh, now you need to look at this, and you change and change and change. And sometimes that can go on for 2 or 3 or 4 processes. And all of that, of course, is time is money for the developer, from a developer's perspective. The other thing is that sometimes, how am I doing on my plan check for whatever it is? Oh, well, that person is on maternity leave, or that person is on vacation, or that person quit, so now it's on the desk of somebody else. The remedy to that I experienced in my career was one in Corning, actually, and another one in Moreno Valley, that we actually set up a particular time associated with that particular task that city staff had to do. And let's say it was going to be for 10 hours. So as long as the process task was on the city's time, we kept track of that they would set up and say, we've got X number of hours, we got X number of days for that. Then that went on to their side of the ledger, if you will, and then they give me the plans back. I had to do my thing. Now it's on my time. But what was very convenient and I thought very fair was that at some point in time, when the city used up their side of the ledger, I started getting reimbursed for my associated carry costs on my land or my development costs or whatever. Anything like that into this particular process that we're now looking at is where there is a fact, a time frame that, hey, we're going to get this done on our side of the counter. We're going to get this done within 60 days. We guarantee. And if not, X or whatever, anything like that into this particular process.
I don't think that we have any time guarantees in our current process. Most of our, I think, interaction with our engineers through Coastland has been pretty responsive and fully staffed, but we can look into those things and deem every plan review is going to be a little different. So it might be hard to quantify that, but There could be a possibility to look into either individual estimates or things like that per plan check.
Well, going along with what I think David and Rick were pointing out is to make it even more enhancing to potential developers to come into our community and saying, hey, this is a organization, this is a place where they really do mean business.
Mhm.
So I would suggest if there's a way to take a look at that, because I know it has been done in other municipalities, Corning being one.
Okay.
I am going back 25 to 30 years in my career, however, so I don't know if times have in fact changed, but nevertheless, that's what I've experienced in the past. Thank you,
Uh-huh.
Mr. Mayor.
Good, you're welcome.
Sorry, can I ask? Ian, have you dealt with anything like that? With you guys at all? Have you dealt with any municipalities that requested of you or anything like that?
Not that I've, since I've been with Coastline, no.
Okay. I was just curious if you had any history with it or not. Sorry, sir.
No, no worries, no problem. Any further questions, comments from the council?
Just one last
Yeah,
question.
Mr. Thomas.
The resolution says the fees listed in Schedule A will be effective September 23rd. Is it a 90-day required period,
Yeah, there's a 60-day requirement.
60 or 90?
I believe it's pretty 60-day period.
It's 60 days.
Well, this is June, so July, August. It'll be 60 days, right? This
Yeah.
is September 23.
I think we probably were anticipating if you had changes or wanted to just bring this back again, or we're
Yeah.
just building in, a little extra padding time, but certainly we'd love to implement them sooner. That'd be wonderful.
Anything for, yeah,
No.
anything for the, Rick? No, just one last comment, and, thank goodness it's been changed to cost recovery from pass-through, because what in the heck does pass-through mean? That term never made any sense to me, that right there. At the very beginning, what's a pass-through? I mean, a lot of folks have no idea what a pass-through means. What does that mean? So thank you for, changing that.
Well, yeah, clarification.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. That's a positive for sure. So with this, if there's no further questions or comments from the council, we will go to the public hearing portion at this time. We've now come to the public input portion of the hearing. This public hearing is being recorded, as the entire meeting is being recorded, and is subject to possible review by the courts. Therefore, all statements or remarks must be made clearly and distinctly into the microphone. If there is anyone in the audience who has any pertinent evidence or opinions or statements relevant to issues being heard, please step to the microphone. And although it is not required, it is also requested that you please state and spell your name for the record, and comments are generally restricted to 3 minutes. Time is 7:23, it's now 7:24 PM on Tuesday, June 25th. We'll open the public hearing in reference to item 6B, the master fee schedule update at this time. Public hearing is now open. Are there any public comments? Yes. Evening, Mr. Ross. Yes, you may. Good evening.
Doug Ross, DOUG, ROSS resident of Willows, proudly for 30 years a resident of Willows, I might add. What I was gonna say is I've been, had some envisionments of Sacramento where I grew up, left, returned to for a long time. So using Sacramento as an analogous model to Willows City finance and government. When there's a fire or an incident at the state capitol building, for example, the very legislature, hall of infamy, if you will, excuse me, Sacramento, then the fire department waits on the building or the police wait on the building. But to my knowledge, and then I was thinking about the Willows model in my mind, like a tabletop model of Willows, and I was seeing the Bureau of Reclamation and Caltrans as an equipment yard, and you got GCID, and you got other big player agencies, as I would call them. Well, perhaps it's more envisionable in Sacramento that there seems like it would be quite a lot coming out of the Sacramento city budget in the context of somewhat of a crude analogy to a master fee schedule, that and not being employed by the League of California Cities, I don't really have time to research that kind of thing, but I really wonder if these big player agencies are paying their share, like the fireman risk and the policeman risk. Again, using the state capital as a model. So here's the city of the state people getting all this essentially free service, and I don't think they're billed for it. Well, you know, and then I was thinking in the smaller model of Willows, so to speak, smaller, bigger, is relative, but the new sheriff's administration wing, and then you got the courthouse, and then you got the Brandon Thompson's and Justin Gibbs's building. And I was thinking to myself, you know, and then you got the DMV and everything, that they're not analogously charged fees the way that the developer or the person using the swimming pool or the pickleball court or softball field lights and all. So let me close with just by saying that I'm more making a long-term point. I'd like to see the city of Willows prosper financially, and thus, you know, the residents be satisfied with the reason for having a city government. So I'm just going to look at it as 2024 through 2044, a 20-year look. It's not that far away. I don't think I'm being that futuristic, even though I have a tendency to sort of go into outer space quite a ways when I try to make points. To be a journalist, you gotta. I apologize for all past times I may have stretched the city council's imagination, but I think it should be seriously contemplated that these higher government entities not get so much of a free ride as they're getting out of local jurisdictions who must shoulder the financial weight, but they're not getting money from the entities that are benefited. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ross. Any further public comments tonight in reference to this item? Any further public comments? No further public comments. Thank you for your comments. Time is 7:28 PM. We'll close the public hearing in reference to this matter at this time. Pleasure of the council in reference item 6B, the master fee schedule update.
I would move to approve the resolution of the City Council of the City of Willow, State of California, establishing a schedule of fees and charges for the city services and repealing previously adopted fees and charges for such services to be effective September 1, 2020.
Second.
Councilmember Thomas has moved to approve item 6B and the resolution attached with the amendment to be effective as of what date?
September 1.
September 1, 2024. That would be the amendment. Otherwise, the attached resolution with that amendment would, it's the motion to approve, seconded by Councilmember Bodden. Further discussion?
I would like to amend the approval.
Mr. Hudson?
I'd like to amend that we do change the type of correction and then also remove the initial, what is it called again? Sorry, the new business fire inspection fee.
So the correction you mentioned,
The correction that I mentioned, it is on.
I remember you mentioned it,
specifically,
but
residential solar more than 10 kilowatts,
okay,
needs to be corrected to a $1 charge per kilowatt above 10 kilowatts.
Joe, you clear on that amendment?
Clear, yes.
Okay, very good. Okay.
I know you noted it, but I wanted to make sure. it
Mr.
was
City
on
Clerk,
record.
clear on that amendment. And the other amendment was the fire,
Remove the new business fire inspection fee of $100.
the first inspection.
Yeah, for the new, not the re-inspection.
With the new business.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, that's an amendment. Mr. Thomas, Bodden?
I'd like to know if we don't remove the fire fee, can we still waive it periodically by choice? Would you prefer it be gone, or would you prefer it be there and that we say have
think it-
discretion?
It would be difficult in the fee schedule to be, I mean, the fee schedule is pretty concrete. So as Joe indicated earlier, I think we'd have to do something in the municipal code if we were going to have some sort of discretion, but the fee schedule is the fee schedule. So it's either there or it's not. And then the discretionary ability would be more in the code. and want some language there, but I guess my question to you would be, who makes that decision? It's discretionary. If it's gonna be sometimes, not all the time, who has the discretion? Council? Is it administrative? And what would be the conditions for it?
Well, Ms. Manager, I don't know the answer to that, but I do want and believe we need to be flexible and adapt to the momentary opportunities. So I don't know where to do that. If the code is black and white and it is inflexible and cannot be adjusted because it is in print, and if we do it for one person, then we will have to do it for everybody. If that's the logic, then there is no flexibility. So where do we get this flexibility that I want?
It's government, so it's hard to find. I
It
will admit
exists in
that.
government. It just, I
But-
want, it happens.
Uh,
It's
I
done.
mean, what about if the criteria was some sort of hardship application, that it's, that the criteria has something to do with actually, I'm just starting a new business for the first time and this is, and somebody fills out an application like that. I mean, we could come up with something and then there's a methodology for us to be able to, otherwise it's just our discretion or your discretion. We're not going to bring things to the council for $100, right? So then it's
That's
our
right.
discretion. And staff are always reluctant to have that discretion, quite frankly. We like things codified in the code or in a master fee schedule so that we are being objective. It never looks like we're doing something sketchy, for lack of a better word, that we are following some set of rules that are pragmatic and everybody can understand and everybody gets treated the same way. So the only thing I can think of that could be possible is maybe some sort of hardship application as a criteria for waiving.
Nah, that's more work. I think what I'm
Where's that?
hearing is that we cannot adjust these fees under any circumstances. And if that's the case, then I would support your motion with all the amendments to waive the $100.
Well, as far as waiving $100 for the fire, we're charging them $110 for a business license. Right. So it does not make sense to me that we would waive $100 fire fee while we're charging them $110 for the privilege of doing business in our city. To me,
May I
it-
speak to that as a builder developer? That these need to be consistent and constant, no matter what we set. If you start making these modifications and that type of thing and allowing for it, then as Marty points out, is the discretion problem. And the appearance problem, the favoritism problem, or the payback problem, or all the other things that, so it needs to be concrete and established. Either waive them or have them, but don't let them be flexible. I agree that the master fee schedule, I agree with Mr. Sprague's comments, the master fee schedule should be an intact document. Clear, with clear fees established.
And I'm not saying make anything waivable. I'm saying clearly state that your first fire inspection is free. I think a business license, serves a different purpose than your initial fire inspection fee. The business license is letting the city know what businesses are currently running inside the city. And then as well as the renewals, right? But I do believe that the fire inspection fee is, like I said, it's the city trying to offer a freebie to say, hey, we're actually waiving this fee for all new businesses trying to come to our town. I think that the business license is a paramount application to have so that we know who is actually in business inside our city limits. That would be my differentiation there, so.
So we have a motion that's been amended and the motion person needs to say yes or no, and so
Well,
is the second.
Yes, we have a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution with the effective effective date.
On the effective date
For
from
60.
September 23
Right.
to September 1st.
Right.
Is that what I
To
understand?
take effect in 60 days rather than the 90 days. It's outlined in the staff report. So that is a motion on the floor at this time. And I turn to Councilmember Thomas with Mr.
I'll leave my motion stand as is.
Very good. Mr. Hudson?
Well, you know what to do.
I don't know what to do here.
You
You can always
vote against.
If
it.
there's
Yeah,
a
vote,
second.
And if that motion
You
fails,
didn't
then you
ask
can,
me.
We're still having discussion. but it's been moved and seconded, so we'll have a vote on this matter as it stands. We're still in discussion.
And we're including the correction to the typo, correct?
Yeah, that's.
The solar,
That's Scrivener error.
the solar typo.
Yeah.
Has been addressed.
Okay.
Yes. Any further discussion?
No.
Mr. Hoover, this will be a roll call vote, please.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Sprague,
Yes.
Councilmember Bodden,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hudson,
Yes.
Mayor Hanson.
Matter carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. City Clerk. Moving on to item 7, discussion and action calendar. All matters in this section of the agenda are discussed and will be acted on individually. Individuals wishing to address the city council concerning any of these items are invited to make oral comments of up to 3 minutes at this time. And please address your comments to the mayor and council members, not to staff and or the audience. When the mayor calls for public comment, please raise your hand to be acknowledged. While not required, the city requests that you please state your name clearly for the audio recording. And as a reminder, once again, by state law, the city council is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Item 7A, SB 1 Transportation Funds Project List for fiscal year 2024-2025. Consider approval of the attached resolution and approve the attached resolution. And 1, review the recommended street projects to be funded with SB 1 monies. 2, receive public comments. 3, direct staff to make any changes if necessary. 4, direct staff to proceed with submitting the fiscal year 24-25 road maintenance and rehabilitation account, also known as RMRA, project list to the state of California for approval. And 5, authorize the necessary changes to the budget reflecting the anticipated revenues from SB 1 as mentioned herein and the expenditures for improvements to the streets included in the 2025 pavement rehabilitation project as mentioned herein. City Manager Marty Brown, any comments before we turn it over to Community Development Services Director Joe Betancourt?
The only thing I wanted to mention is I know there's been a lot of discussion amongst the council and with members of the public about Green Street. And, we're able to talk a little bit more about that tonight if the council's interested. This is also, I wanted to point out that this project list is required by state law, but it can be amended and it can be changed. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. It's not etched in stone for the entire 12 months and can't be changed or something.
Very good, Marty. Thank
Other
you.
than that, I think Ian's actually giving the presentation.
Our deputy city engineer, Ian Brunswick. Ian.
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
Sorry,
Mayor.
Didn't mean to mow over you.
No,
Go
no.
ahead.
Excuse me. So just a quick background, in 2017, Senate Bill SB 1 was approved by then Governor Jerry Brown. The bill provides new revenues for road maintenance projects within the city limits. According to state projections for fiscal year 24-25, the city is anticipating to receive approximately $165,705 in SB 1 revenues for this upcoming fiscal year. Now, state regulations require that specific projects funded by SB 1 monies be annually approved by the city council. Once it's approved, city will report the project list as well as associated project information to the state for final approval. So before I get into any funding, I wanted to talk a little bit about the 3 locations that we've identified as part of this SB 1 report. I did want to start off by saying that the 3 areas, which I'll go through in a little bit more detail, were determined using data from the city's pavement management plan, which was focusing on roadway segments with low PCI ratings, and then also geographical locations of these projects, focusing on areas near parks and schools, and then obviously other opportunities to provide increasing access and mobility options for bicyclists and users of all ages and abilities. And one last thing I'd like to add is the locations that we were looking at also trying to find and maximize the value to the city in terms of benefiting the greatest amount of residents within the city of Willows. So having said that, I'd like to quickly, I'd like to go through these 3 locations that we are presenting to council in accordance with SB 1. The first one being West Sycamore Street with limits from North Villa Avenue to South Culver Avenue. This particular project or work area associated with SB 1 is focusing on primarily expanding the existing bicycle infrastructure within the city. So as you know, with the current annual paving project that is being constructed in the city of Willows along Humboldt Avenue, which ties into Sycamore, ending at Villa, we did install Class 2 bike facilities. And this particular project would take and expand on that paving project, the limits of the bikeway, and add new Class 2 bike lanes, striping, and signage, which would extend from North Villa Avenue to South Culver Avenue. And we feel that this would be a tremendous value in terms of providing increased mobility options and really working to connect the city's bikeways. So kind of piggybacking off that first project area, the second one is kind of picks up off at South Culver Avenue with limits from Sycamore going down to West Laurel Street. And this particular location, we looked at, it is located and it abuts Sycamore Park. Being out in the field and just observing the situation, there's an extensive amount of foot and bicycle traffic through that area. And we felt that with the condition of the roadway having a PCI of 32, and looking at the geographical location, as well as, the benefits that we could do, that we could bring to the city in terms of, reconstructing this road and bringing it up to an acceptable PCI rating. That is the justification behind selecting South Culver as a potential option for SB1 for this next fiscal year. The third item, which is Madrone Manor, was added to this based on the feedback that we received from residents. That's another thing I wanted to also expand on. We're looking at the PCI ratings, areas, parks and schools, but we're also taking into consideration feedback from council and from residents. So this third item here, the Madrone Manor cul-de-sac, it's a very small footprint, only about 5,000 square feet. But it's an existing cul-de-sac that has frankly failed. I know there's a lot of streets around the city that have a similar problem. But we are trying to be responsive to some of the feedback that we're receiving from residents in the city of Willows. And we feel that the proposed treatment, which is a 3-inch asphalt mill and fill, will help to address some of the issues that they're having in the cul-de-sac area, which is mainly attributed to heavy vehicle loading, crash trucks making, the roundabout turn around that cul-de-sac. So what we propose to do here is to reconstruct the knuckle, per se, and bring this section, which is a PCI 20, which is essentially poor to fail, up to an acceptable level as well. So looking at the total estimated costs for these three components, we're looking at approximately $460,000. So I wanted to kind of go back to the funding element, and I know I've mentioned previously that in the FY 24-25 allocation for SB1, city is anticipating to receive $165,705 of SB1 money for this next fiscal year. In order to make this project work, we were anticipating to utilize $109,616, of rolled over available SB1 funds from the prior fiscal year to supplement the funds that we would be allocated for FY 24-25. Additionally, in order for us to make that work, we would also need to allocate $45,000 from the gas tax fund and $139,679 of available RSTP funds to supplement the SB1 monies in order to make these projects come to fruition. I also wanted to touch on the fact that we have also received feedback from council on a couple of different streets. And I do know that there are several, within the city that, are in need of more than just a facelift. Green Street, we looked at Oak, also Eureka. And the preliminary estimates that we have there are such that, minimally 500,000 for each of these locations would be kind of a floor estimate of what we would need in terms of funding in order to either reconstruct, do a mill and overlay, or a combination thereof, depending on the location of the streets and how we, evaluate. So, I did want to just, bring to council that we are looking and we do receive that feedback. But given the limited amount of funding that we have, the 165,000, with, SB1 funds, we're hoping that the three locations that we're presenting, this evening, will provide maximum value based on the current funding that we have available and what we think we can accomplish for each of these three locations. So, I kind of leave it there and wanted to open it up for questions and see if I can answer any feedback.
Yeah, thank you
Provide
for the
feedback.
report, Ian. Thank you very much. Council members, questions, comments?
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Sprague.
I would have expected that he might have shown up for this discussion, but we have an email, or at least I had an email, maybe the rest of you did too, from former councilman Keith Corum. Just kind of an observation here. He points out that he's lived in his home 50 years. That struck me right in the face, considering that I was the 26-year-old contractor that built his home some 50 years ago, but nevertheless, beside that. But he's in his email, he's talking about his preferred expenditure to be done for Green Street. By way of history, the current staff would know, I'm sure. I think it was probably 2004. The city council made and the study that he refers to here, several years ago, a street study was done in regard to streets and so on and so forth. He's asking, was that study used this year for looking at those, in my recollection, that study was done in 2002, maybe 2003. In 2004, the city council made a conscious decision to resurface from Wood Street, 162, going north down to Green Street on Shasta. What would it be? Would it be Plumas, Shasta, and then Butte Street, taking it down to Green Street, with the idea that Green Street would be then slated for development. You're absolutely right. There's some exceptional cost associated with that to the tune of $500,000. But about 3 or 4 months ago, John Wagner presented to us that he had an offer from the county of having a leftover 850 some odd thousand dollars of their STIP funding. And at that time, I made the recommend that if there was a joint venture that could be done with the county and the city, and of course, since Green Street is 60% owned by one entity and 40% by the other, it only seemed logical to me that we took advantage of that $800,000 residual that the county was offering. And to offset, as you point out, this $500,000 fee and so on. My point is, did any of that conversation ever take place and working with the county in regard to that? I'm seeing the city manager's head bob up and down. It looks like yours might be too. So what was the outcome of that discussion?
Yes, Councilmember Sprague, there were previous discussions between the city and the county. It's my understanding that Green Street, as you had mentioned, in the northerly section, or 40% of the road is county-owned. The southern section, where 60% of it is city-owned. The county was provided, my understanding is the county was provided plans, but the total cost associated to those improvements were not able to be borne by the county's crews, and it would be subject to the public bidding process and
They
prevailing.
weren't, I'm sorry, repeat that for me.
So the county looked at the plans and the estimate and determined that it was above and beyond the capabilities of their staff, and that it would be subject to public bidding and prevailing wage requirements based on the extent of the estimate and what the total cost would be anticipated for that particular location. And that's essentially all the background I have on that, but I do know that the city and county have engaged in discussions about that specific item.
Yeah, yeah, Mr. Sprague, I have that information as well. So I believe, so just to clarify, I believe the study that Mr. Corum, because I received the same email and I responded.
Okay.
I believe the study he was inquiring about was the pavement condition index that was completed about 3 years ago, the latest version for the city and the county,
Okay,
not that previous study from, 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
Right, so I reached out to City Manager Marty Brown when I received the email, who reached out to our city engineer. And I wanted to make sure that my recollection of the actions was accurate, and it was. And John Wanger responded, and I forwarded that information on to Mr. Corum, and also with a copy to our key staff man.
So am I to understand then that we're looking at two different studies specific, or two different analyses? Or,
The way I'm viewing it, I believe Mr. Corum was speaking about the pavement condition index from just 3 or 4 years ago.
Right.
The latest one, the current PCI that our team utilizes for these projects. So that would be, the answer would be, Keith's question was this utilized? And the answer would be yes.
okay,
That study was utilized as indicated in the staff report on page 142, the second page of staff report, in the block, the gray block right in the middle, pavement condition index.
so it's a more current study than what I was extrapolating that
Right,
was done.
because the pavement condition index on Green Street is 34. So based on a 0 to 100, it's a failing grade naturally. But and the initial from John Wanger's communication with the county, and you indicated it's 60-40%. The city owns approximately 60% of Green Street, and the
Right.
county owns approximately 40% of Green Street in that area, a 3.5 block area. And just to back up, we conducted emergency repairs of a half block of the worst section near Green and Lassen Street,
Right.
just a few months ago, which is
For a little over $105,000, if I recall.
so John listed and Marty can go share this information with council members as well. So you have the same information that I'm talking about here tonight, but John covered all the points that, the conversation. He and the team had meetings with the county in reference to, conducting the work in-house as Ian spoke of, in order to save costs. However, in 2022 dollars, those numbers were, for John Wanger's estimates, that just for Green Street, not Eureka Street, just Green Street was estimated in 2022, $535,000. That would have been $321,000 for on cost of the city in 2022 for the 3.5 block major reconstruction stretch of just Green Street. Well, Eureka Street, as we know, a good portion of that is also county. So it's jointly county city owned. And that is, as we know, is terrible as well. So we're talking about a lot of money, a lot of funds to bring those up to standard. And so I just wanted to reiterate I believe that's what Keith was talking about, the PCI.
PCI, okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I went all the way back.
Didn't mean to interrupt. I just
No,
wanted to
no,
clarify.
that's,
Go ahead, please. Continue the comment.
If that's what he's referring, no, that's all. I just, it seemed like a good opportunity to be able to take advantage of some of the extra funding in there, but nevertheless.
We actually did go through the whole process of
I'm sorry?
design.
Okay.
We did actually go through the entire process of coming up with design drawings, and we thought we were really close to being able to use they were generous in offering county public works staff to do the work. But when we exceeded their bidding requirements, after the project was basically designed, they came back and said, well, now we're past the limit. We're going to have to go out to bid. And that was a game changer for the city in terms of the funding we had available.
Out of full disclosure and just kind of an observation here, the 13 acres that's north of this particular piece of property, I had optioned for about 5 or 6 years. And I had done the cost analysis engineering to improve both sides of the street at my cost. And this was probably 2005, 2004, 5 or 6. And believe it or not, I could have put curbs, gutter, sidewalk,
and asphalt on that entire stretch from Butte Street down to Lassen Street for a little less than $750,000, 20+ years ago. So there's the cost associated with this thing. It's gone literally through the roof. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm done.
You're welcome. Further questions, comments from the council?
Mr. Mayor, yes, do you follow the price of oil when you're looking at estimating the cost for these paving tasks?
Essentially, we do, but it's tied into costs associated with the materials that would contain the oil. So in one way, it is related, but I guess my apologies to not directly, but they're all, the cost of asphalt,
Yeah.
rubberized asphalt. I mean, it does fluctuate in accordance with the price of oil.
Yeah,
So I mean,
absolutely.
it's a similar indicator.
Would we have the ability to adjust if the oil prices drop dramatically and we saw an opportunity to jump in? Is that something we can do? I mean, I've done that, so
I think if the price of oil dropped and we were able to get better bid prices as a result based on materials, fuel costs and other components associated with that,
Yeah.
I think that would benefit the city.
are these
would
based on
reduce-
local pavers like Knife River or those kinds of folks, or how do we come up with these numbers?
It's a multitude of really analyzing the current bid environment, not just with any particular contractor or city. We look at the geographical region, the size of the project, and a couple of other intangibles that would really drive those unit costs. But to your point, and I would, at least my understanding is that it does directly relate with the price of oil, at least for building materials and emulsion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Thomas? No. Okay. Mr. Hudson?
Do you have a cost associated with each one of these projects?
Yes, we do.
I'm just curious, the bike lane stripping and signage, is that gonna be done on South Culver Avenue as well? When you guys redo that with and don't ask me what type 3 microsurfacing and Cape Seal is, because I have no idea.
It's a multi-stage pavement treatment. Typically what happens there is the crews will come in and they do what's called a type 3 microsurfacing.
Mhm.
It basically takes out a lot of the deformations in the pavement, provides an adequate structural section. We come back with a rubberized Cape Seal, which basically is, it's called a chip seal. They put rubber chips down. It's pressed down onto the type 3 microsurface, and then we come through with a slurry seal, which locks everything in, provides excellent protection from water intrusion and other problems that we might be associated with it here in the city.
So is that kind of what they did to Humboldt and?
Yes.
Okay. And so then they will, on that section of Culver, they will be adding the bike lanes and everything else
Yes,
as well
and
when they repaint it?
I will note on the staff report that it does not explicitly state that on the type of treatment, but that is my understanding that we would look to incorporate class
Okay.
2 bike lanes to expand the bike network through that area.
And then with that project, since I know that section of street actually butts up to Sycamore Park, will that be, is there any chance of us incorporating the funds from the grant to redo this, install actually a sidewalk along that edge? That's more of a staff question slash off the wall idea that crossed my mind. Is there a way to incorporate those two or really not really?
It's my understanding that it would be challenging, but I don't believe that's possible, given the different funding.
No, I mean, honestly, the bike lane striping and signage is a great idea. If all of our streets were in great shape, but I don't know what is that alone costing us? Cause that's about what, 2 blocks?
Yes, so our estimated cost for that particular improvement
Mhm.
along Sycamore is approximately 57,000. And I could also just expand on that and say that the South Culver Avenue improvements, the total estimated cost for that particular location was 350,000. And the Madrone Manor cul-de-sac improvements were estimated at 53,000.
So the mill infill is only 53,000 for that. That's big. That's a big cul-de-sac. It's not a small one. Okay. No, I'm just thinking kind of if we didn't do the bike lane striping and signage, can we save that money to possibly do a bigger project next year on roads that actually need the repairs where the potholes and things like that are disruptive? And that's kind of where my mindset's at right now. So I know there's been a lot of work put into this.
Can you expand on what you mean by, I mean, just like some of the areas where we have a whole series of potholes in one area? Can you talk about-
One example that I brought up actually to you and the fire chief was in front of the fire station. You know, there's an area there that needs work that you hit every time, and Kyle's here, he can probably vouch to it. You hit it with the fire engine and it jolts that engine, and then our engines have to go into the shop and get repaired. In front of the fire station, we also can't park some of our bigger engines in the front because we have to worry about hitting the curb or hitting the concrete or the asphalt and messing up the road or, you know, the driveway into the fire department. So, you know, there's areas like that. There's potholes along Laurel. There's, you know, there's a lot of areas in town that need more. To me, I think the striping is more of a manicure. It's more of a, we're putting polish on something, where I think that money could be used to actually, you know, actually fix a problem.
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to clarify was whether you meant sections of whole streets, like when we just, you know, 2 years ago now did Lassen Street versus sections that have many, you know, like a half a block even that have multiple, you know, potholes. And I mean, there's one, Mayor Hanson right near your house.
They're all over the city.
They're all over the city, yeah.
Ash Street happens to be one of them.
But it's, I mean, it would have to be
6
actually
road.
ground out and
Yeah.
a whole
Yeah.
section would have to be like a quarter of a block or a half a block would have to be done. Actually, Joe and I, if that's what you mean, that Joe and I just talked about that today, because I actually also thought that maybe figuring out a way to come up with some money, CDBG grant will be coming out soon. There was the offer that Marty made around transportation funds to the council, whether that could be leveraged, because I kind of thought if we could do some of those sections where we could grind out and do like, you know, where it's a quarter or half a block of a street and do that in different places where it's really, really bad, that might be more interesting, I guess, for lack of a better word, to the council and the public than streets that, you know, like Lassen, that, I mean, it's nice, it's a great street, but I'm not sure we're getting what we want exactly, you know, with the limited funds we have, if the city and the council is getting exactly what they want. And it's, you know, those places, a lot of those places have to completely be ground out. And a whole section would have to be redone. For example, we talked about Eureka Street at North Tehama. And John and I had a conversation when former Supervisor Quorum's email first came into, you know, I think he sent individual emails to all 5 of you. And I received initially from the mayor and then later from the vice mayor. So I initially responded to the mayor with a response, but I had a long conversation with John about it. And he said, you know, that really bad section right at Gandy and Staley, I mean, it would cost $500,000 to do everything that Ian just talked about, but we could do 100 feet and ground out that whole section and very likely use gas tax monies this next year to do that. If that's the concern, is like places like that we could make something like that work at a price point that we could afford with the special funding that we do have. So that's one possibility for that particular area, but in a broader way, and I actually did want to talk to the council at some point about this. I didn't know this was going to be my opportunity, but whether, you know, you would like us to pivot a little bit more and look at these places where we could do sections like that. Because, you know, I drive through the city all the time, obviously, and I run into it and I just think, wow, I forgot the streets like this. I should have gone around. Like that's the first thing I think of, because there's some really, really bad sections. And
Absolutely.
I totally appreciate that and understand if there's a price point at which we can fix those. I think that should be a priority for sure, but I wanted to see what the council thinks of that.
And I honestly, I think that the beautification, I think the bike lane and striping, I think it looks great. To me, but it's a beautification project. It's not what our needs are. And that's just like I said, it's one person out of the five of us. And so that's why I'm saying if that's 57,000, then that could possibly be used towards, like you're saying, even if it's cutting out the section and redoing it. I'm assuming that that's going to last at least the same 10 years that these bike lanes were supposed to. I
Well,
don't know.
hopefully longer, because sometimes, bike lanes fade and you have to
Yeah.
redo them, so.
Well, and like I said, I don't know what that type of work, actually, how long the longevity is of that, right? But I know there's plenty of places around this town where that 57,000 could be spent to actually improve the citizens rather than making it look nice to drive through. And that's just, like, that's my 2 cents.
Well,
so.
isn't the cul-de-sac, it is intended to be itself is really a grind out, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so bad.
Complete.
So
Mhm.
that you can just get a sense from that costing 52,000, what it might, cost to do something similar
That's a
on
decent
similar
size.
magnitude.
Yeah,
A decent sized cul-de-sac.
5,040 square feet for the report.
Well, if I may, I support Councilman Hudson's idea that the use of that money for something more real and tangible with a better return on investment is
Absolutely.
better use of the money. And honestly, I mean, I love bikes and I see a lot of bike riders in other cities. I don't see a lot of bike riding in Willows. No offense to anybody. I hope. Well, I'm, okay. But anyway, I believe Mr. Hudson has a good idea. Let's use that money where we get a better return.
Don't
I
get me
agree.
wrong, I have 3 kids and the bike lanes are great because they have their own designated spot. And when I see them right out of that, I can holler at them. At the same time, I want the person that's driving that car next to them not be hitting a pothole or trying to swerve around the pothole, and that really be the cause of where somebody's gonna get hurt.
Yeah, I agree with everything Evan said.
So,
Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor, may I bounce back on something on
Yes.
Madrone Manor here, please? Madrone Manor, of course, again, the cul-de-sac that I built houses on, as I'm reminded here, 50 years ago. But Madrone Manor is not too dissimilar to the knuckle on Lassen and Glenwood, where we now have carved out a spot that we're replacing. And of course, some 6 or 7 years ago, California Water Service, when they were doing the water main extension down on Lassen and Glenwood, took the opportunity to go ahead and make that repair as well. While we were doing Pacific Avenue, the cul-de-sac on, I think it's at Jackson or is it Jefferson, a north end cul-de-sac on Jefferson. We did the replacement of that cul-de-sac to
Yes,
the
yes,
outside.
yes.
Okay. So the point is that a lot of those locations, from my perspective, the culprit is actually waste management trucks turning around tightly in those particular locations. So my question is, are we recovering any of those costs from waste management in regard to these repairs and those cul-de-sacs and those particular locations?
Typically, in a franchise agreement, you have additional funds that you get as part of your franchise agreement that are embedded in that fee. And it's intended, part of the use for the city is to maintain their roads. So,
So are we using any of that money for this?
well, it's just embedded in the franchise fee. So so the answer is, I don't think so, but I'll have to check and I could confirm with
So
Andy.
if it's embedded in the franchise fee, it would probably go into the general fund as opposed to being specifically earmarked for road repair? That's a question. And
Right, and you're probably right. I'll have to confirm that with Andy. I mean, typically, like the way the franchise fee is structured is there's a whole bunch of various aspects and criteria, just like the master fee schedule, that go into structuring that fee, the franchise fee. And one element of it is a consideration of road improvements and the wear and tear on the road. So it's not, you can't see it in the franchise fee, but it went into the process of developing the actual franchise fee. So it's just assumed, for example, by WM that, well, we pay you franchise fees, so you're doing whatever you do with that. And if that's improving roads, it's improving roads. And there's no like additional fee on top of it or something that they
Okay.
pay that I know of.
is that adjustable, a franchise fee or no?
Is that
The next
just
time,
entered into a new contract?
Next
I think, s-
contract.
yeah,
Next
yeah,
time.
the next time there's a new contract, and those are usually for 15 or 20 years.
Okay.
Okay, so that would take staff time to obviously take a look at that and make a proportionate amount. Take it out of the franchise fee and say this goes.
We can certainly, I mean, we can engage WM in conversation about like, look, some of these places look a little bit, there's just more than standard wear and tear here. And I mean, I think that's a fair conversation for us to engage them about when we look at the ones that are the worst, especially a cul-de-sac. I mean, it's not from somebody's RV doing donuts or something like that at the end of the cul-de-sac, right? I mean, I think it's all pretty clear to us that it's from larger, heavy-duty trucks like a garbage truck.
Right.
And so in those situations, I think it's easier to make the connection and have a conversation with WM about, well, there's some specific areas that are worse than others, and could we talk about shared cost or something like that? And we certainly can do that if that interests the council and approach them in the conversation. So,
Yeah, let them know we take donations.
yeah. Well, right, yeah.
Yeah, so would that take a consensus to give staff direction on being able?
I
to
mean,
follow
I think
through?
I hear what you're saying,
Accept tips.
Member Sprague, and I'm pretty sure everybody on the council will agree with you. And I will absolutely talk to Andy about how we are allocating those franchise fees and see if there's a way to allocate some towards roads. I think it would impact the general fund. We don't have much money, as you know, so. I mean,
Well, and with
just have to
waste
see.
management trucks, you know, between garbage, green waste and recycle, you're talking 3 trips all over the city constantly.
Right.
Alleyways, roadways, you mentioned Ash Street. The damage from Ash Street's from waste management, clearly. They're up and down there constantly. Trucks are heavy. Look at all the alley damage we have, the curb damage we have, the cul-de-sac damages. I mean, it goes on and on, but that would definitely be a good discussion to have with waste management. Madrone Manor is in terrible shape, and we, you know, have received, as we know, complaints in reference to that. So I'm very pleased to see that that is on the list. I agree with Evan's comments entirely. I mean, the bike striping is great, but we have other needs all over the city. We've got to take care of Green and Eureka Streets. I mean, it's deplorable, you know, and just getting worse. So Evan's 1 of 5, you know, 1 of 5, we're all 1 of 5 here. I'd like to see that $57,000, even though bikes are great. Bike striping's great. I think we could utilize it in other areas, and we've heard all those. We've heard all the areas we can utilize that $57,000 for. I'd be in favor of proceeding with the South Culver Avenue Madrone Manor this evening and utilizing the $57,000 elsewhere in the system where it could be utilized.
Second.
So the list is due July 1st to the state, and we can amend it, but we do need to submit something. So my staff recommendation to the council would be to approve the list and allow us to submit it, and then let us come back and amend it after we've been able to, you know, review all the feedback we've gotten from you tonight and make an amendment very shortly. But let us get this submitted to the state because we do have a
Very
deadline.
good.
Can I ask one quick question?
Mhm.
And these are all special funds, correct? These are not, none of this can be
Yes, this
allocated.
is all SB1 funds, which is what SB1 requires submitting a list annually to the state, and these are all as Senate Bill 1 funds.
Just confirming that all the monies that we're using for these projects can strictly only go towards repaving, and they're not coming from another fund that can be used for something else. So I just wanted to make
Right.
sure that was stated clearly. Okay.
That sounds like a viable plan. Any further comments from the council? Any public comments in reference to this matter this evening? Didn't want to forget about our public partners. No public comments? Any further comments from the council in reference to this matter? Pleasure of the council in reference to item 7A.
Mayor, I move that the resolution entitled Adopting List of Street Improvement Projects for Fiscal Year 2024-2025 and recommending the use of SB1 monies to fund said projects be approved with the caveat that we brought back to the council for possible amendment.
Vice Mayor Hudson, I move to approve item 7A as presented. as it will, with the caveat that it also comes back to the council after it's submitted to the state for further consideration.
I'll second that, especially with the caveat.
Councilmember Sprague has the second. Further discussion? Mr. City Clerk, this will be a roll call vote, please. Thank you.
Councilmember Thomas,
Aye.
Councilmember Sprague,
Aye.
Councilmember Bodden,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hudson,
Yes.
Mayor Hanson.
Matter carries unanimously. Thank you. And look forward to seeing Green and Eureka Street on future project lists for the city of Willows.
We'll put our heads together and
Perfect.
figure out how we can come back with that.
Very good. Perfect. Thank you. And appreciate Mr. Quorum's email comments as well. Moving on to item 8, comments and reports. Item 8A, council correspondence. I have not received any. The only correspondence I had has been discussed by the email I received from Mr. Quorum. Marty, anything further? Amos? No?
No.
Item 8B, city council comments and reports. Who would like to begin? Mr. Thomas.
Well, I belong to the group that was working to establish a Boys and Girls Club. And we meet here at the Willows Library. It's led by the county. At the start, the group has basically changed its focus toward more of a construction of a recreation center building. And operating out of that particular place, they like the location of Sycamore Park. If that is a possibility for the city to approve, they intend to seek funding for that project on their own, with grants and other opportunities. They would like to try to nail down a location of where that might be. For example, Sycamore Park, if that's something that the city would like to do. So that would probably need to be presented at a later date when I have more information to give you.
Thank you, Rick.
That's it.
Mr. Vaughn.
Well, yes, we had the opportunity to attend the Board of Supervisors meeting this morning with our city manager and Mr. Thomas. And we were, I think, optimistic about the reality that we're going to get additional funding for the libraries. And it has not passed, so let's not, I won't get too far ahead, but I was advised by more than one key person that that's a highly likely event. We also will collect the monies that have been due us for quite some time here within the next period of time. And it was suggested that we collect the next year's fees for the library in September of this year. If I do my math right, that's 2 annual fees plus the extra money, all in about the month of September. So that should be wonderful. And thank you, Marty, for your presentation at the Board of Supervisors. And Rick was excellent as always. The casino night that was set up for the fireworks fundraiser was canceled due to lack of interest. You guys probably know that. The community market is Saturdays from 8 to 11 at the Tractor Supply outfit. Hopefully you guys will be aware of that. Farmers Brewing is taking over the last stand from 4 to 6 p.m. tomorrow, Thursday rather, excuse me. So if you're into Farmers Brewing, that'd be a nice, fun thing. Let's see, then we have this one, which I'm particularly intrigued about. Let's see if I can find it. Yes, Senior Resource Expo, which is this Thursday from 10 to 3 p.m. at the fairgrounds. So if you're over 55, it looks like a pretty good program, and I think that's a county event. And I had the opportunity going through files to find this material from 2012, and it says, the goal of the city of Willows is to provide city staff with as close to a unified direction as possible and allow them to proceed in the budgeting process. We need to decide if we're willing to let the wage increase deferrals lapse, or should we renegotiate with the parties involved. Second, decide if we should proceed or not proceed with sales tax or a TOT tax measures. If the decision is not to proceed, then start the debate of where to cut. And it's just amazing to me. That was 2012. Sound familiar? Mr. Mayor, I think that's everything I had. Oh, yeah, I'd be interested. Did we not have some meetings of groups or our effort outreach on the sales tax? Were there not at least one meeting of people of the community to talk about the sales tax?
You mean the Financial Sustainability Advisory Committee? Yes. The committee had its third meeting on Monday night. And there were 5 people in attendance. It's varied from 5 to 11. And we received some good feedback on the budget fact sheets and the frequently asked questions. And we're going to be making some revisions to those based on the feedback and have a chance for them to, the group to review that again, those changes. As well as, Carissa is helping us out with, Spanish translation. Mostly the piece that they wanted to change were some of the pie charts, not really so much the narrative. So we're working, I'll be working on that. And then, also, Amos is finalizing the website, and we'll be sharing that with the FSAC, we'll call it the FSAC committee, at their next meeting on July 9th. They meet on the second and fourth Mondays of the month at 5:30 here in council chambers.
Well, I'm particularly interested in any comments or attitudes towards this Measure One sales tax on the November ballot, because I'm getting really positive feedback from people I talk to about supporting the sales tax with a positive yes vote. So I just want to make sure I'm getting a decent sample and not just everybody telling me what I want to hear. So
Yeah, I think the committee members are still, gathering information and trying to understand the budget, and they've had some really great questions, and so that's been, I think it's been very productive meetings and conversation. But I think that they are themselves still trying to just wrap their arms around what's really happening and our financial situation. So.
Right, and how about our public outreach for do we have any date, times, or places to talk to the citizens about specifically Measure One?
Well, while I'm on vacation, Amos is going to have a table at the July 4th event. We will be having also we'll be at the car and bike show in August. I'll be there. I've solicited the sheriff's office to partner in a national night out the first Tuesday in August event, and we will be doing an open city hall crawl event the third Thursday in September, which we're getting funding from WM, Cal Water, and it looks like PG&E to fund most of that event. So those will be all places that we'll be able to distribute. When I return from vacation, I plan to start going to the farmers market. So I thank you for that information, writing that down and distributing there. And eventually, now that allergy season is over for me, also partaking in precinct walking. So
Very good.
there's a pretty robust, we're also going to be working on the Speakers Bureau, and hopefully members of the council will be willing to go out and speak to a variety of groups. And so when I come back, Amos and I will be really ramping that up and also be working on a press kit for the media, especially as we get closer.
And this will include town hall meeting or meetings.
There is a plan for at least one town hall meeting, and that is something I'd like to discuss further with the council on how many you want to have and what role the council would like to play in that. And I have quite a few questions about it, but yes, I definitely intend at least one, if not more.
Thank you.
Mr. Hudson.
Yeah, so we had a library board meeting since our last meeting. Councilmember Thomas was able to join on that one to discuss some statements that were made at the last meeting and taken out of context. Overall, the library's been still trying to offer the same services they have. Their new board member is actually trying to start a senior writing group, which actually used to be in place. And they used to meet right there in the youth room. And essentially what they do is they just all sit down together and whatever diary or a short story, letters to somebody, they get a chance to write where they want. The only rule they have is it can't be political. But she is looking to get that started again, which I think is a great opportunity for some of our citizens. Something that they are doing too is they are offering books at the high school cafeteria as part of the school program that's going on there. And then we discussed a lot of the grants that are funding different library offers the ebooks, the zip books, free passes to state parks, and little bag to take with them to go visit these state parks. Some of the grant funding that used to fund these are slowly being phased out. And they're no longer gonna have them. And then they also had, one of their events called Wild Things, where it's a reading day and they bring in, essentially a petting zoo of reptiles. I think other animals as well. Unfortunately, I missed it. But they had over 100 kids attend that, so it seemed like it was
Very
a good day, yeah. So, and it was hot, I believe, that day too.
Mhm.
It was one of those 100+ days that they decided to do that in. Still got a good attendance, so, that's kind of all I have as far as comments. My one question is on the handout that you have, it doesn't say anything about a sunset clause on there, I believe.
I've
Is
been
that,
asked that, yeah.
Okay.
And,
and I know that,
because I was waiting to see what was gonna happen with
Okay.
the Taxpayer Act and also waiting to see if there was an interest on the part of the council to revisit the sunset. So
okay. And
it
that was-
seems there's not, and there's not enough time either. July 16th is the deadline to submit language to the county,
okay.
which there's not another council meeting until.
Okay. And I just know from talking to some people, that was one of their questions on it, so
That's going to be changed in the final.
perfect. So
This is a
thank you,
work in process.
thank you for putting together that information. It brought a lot of things to light, that I didn't even know. I didn't realize that if the county takes over the town, that there's actually a assessment on the properties and it's added to your property taxes. I didn't know that. And that's, that's good information to know because that affects 100% of our citizens, not no travelers have to worry about that. So I didn't realize that was something that could happen. So
There'll be more on that because I did have a meeting with LAFCO last week and your biweekly update that you'll get on Thursday before I get on a plane will be including information about that meeting with LAFCO as well as some reading material in case you're bored with a whole month of not having council member meetings.
oh, and also thank you for the last bi-weekly meeting. You had a couple of good articles listed in there. One of them talking about essentially city council and the public in the public's eye and the negativity and how that's an ongoing concern. Not just here, as we have stated before, but everywhere. And so hopefully we can paint a better picture than that and have some positivity around here.
Thank you, Evan. Mr. Sprague?
Yes, as I think the council's aware, I've kind of taken Cedar Hills under my wing to be able to try and help facilitate some public image and some repairs and so on out there. And I had to clarify that for several people because then I'll clarify it again for everybody here, is that the image of Cedar Hills as goes the city. That's the biggest housing project that we've got in town, and there's been some problems there. I'm pleased to say that with the new management team that they've got, which are from out of town, have done an excellent job of doing some repairs and cleaning up the image and so on and so forth. I've been pleased to not recommend, but introduce them to several local contractors as opposed to them bringing their contractors up from as far away as San Bernardino, if you can imagine, and the cost associated with that. So they've got some local contractors helping them do a lot of things, the remodeling on the units as they fix them up and tree removal and or trimming and so on and so forth. It's interesting that I've had a couple of people come up to me when I'm out there, some of the residents, and saying, so you're the blue-eyed white man that's trying to help us clean up our neighborhood. And so I wear that badge somewhat honorably, I suppose, but yes, I am. But I am pleased to say that they are improving. They did, in fact, they've opened up the swimming pool. They are remodeling their clubhouse, community center, whatever you want to call it. And they had a pretty good, successful open house on Sunday. I did not attend. I was out of town for family stuff, but I am led to believe that that was pretty successful. So I am pleased to say that there is some improvement going on out there. The image is cleaning up and they're fixing it up. They're towing away wrecks and cars and so on. So the other thing that I've taken the time to do over the last couple of weeks, it's took me quite a bit of time, And at the risk of being accused of being negative, the question is not what I'm about to present to you tonight for your review for our budget meeting tomorrow. The question is not, is it negative, is what I'm asking and what I'm pointing out, is it true? That's the question, not whether it's negative or positive, whether it's true or not. So with that, and I'm sorry, I intended to have this done a little bit sooner, but it took me a little time to finish up my research and what I composed here. The highlighted copy is for the mayor, since it's wet copied, and then copies for the rest of you. In addition to that, and I have the city manager's copy here, I've included with this, if you would, a public information request of the, no, that's for the rest of you, and this is for the city, that's for the city manager. Thank you. And again, I apologize for the delay in getting this to you, but nevertheless, it's something that if we can take a look at it, consider it tomorrow. I'm not into debating it tonight, but I certainly would field any questions that you might have in regard to this tomorrow. So let me have one of those copies back.
Here's
I
one, here's
kept-
one.
Nope, I've got it. Never mind. I've got both of them. At any rate, if we can look at this tomorrow, I'm couching what I've presented to you as observations and questions regarding the possible continued misuse of the sewer fund. These are questions and observations. I'm pleased to be corrected if I'm interpreting some of this stuff wrongly, but I believe I am correctly interpreting some of the activity that I've been able to research and some of the records. I just don't have all the records yet to be able to summarize a complete summary. As you well know, this is an issue that I've been immersed into for now 5 years. Very familiar with it and very familiar with the laws. This is going back to Proposition 218, which I've bored you with the story before. But when Proposition 218 passed, it then created what was referred to as the Proposition 218 Omnibus Bill that collected all of the changes that had to happen in state statute and regulations. While Proposition 218 changed some of the constitutional amendments, it in fact impacted some 1,500 other state laws that had to be modified and changed. About 6 or 7 of those became pretty controversial, and I was the consultant to the council, to the Senate, what they call it, local government committee in regard to that. So I deep dove into that particular process, so very familiar with it. Nevertheless, I'll conclude in just saying I would ask that you would respectively take a look at what I've identified as I see as potential problems and the questions that I'm asking for or to be answered and the public information I'm asking for. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sprague. Just briefly, I have 2 meetings to report out on: Regional Transit Committee meeting and the Glenn County Transportation Commission meeting, which were held last Thursday, June 20th, in Orland for the first time in 7 years. We're back on a rotation schedule. We're meeting at the Glen Success Square as the Orland City Council chamber still has ADA issues. Routine business for the Regional Transit Committee, rather short agenda because we just had a meeting to re-announce regular meeting 2 weeks ago. The Transportation Commission meeting, routine business with the exception of approving the annual budget, and it was approved unanimously for the annual operational budget for the Transportation Commission for the year. So with that, that's all I have. Marty, any further city manager reports? It sounds like you covered most of it.
Yeah, the only thing is just what I did say, but explicitly I'll say is the July 9th city council meeting is canceled and the next council meeting will be July 23rd.
Very good, Marty. Thank you very much.
The 9th meeting is canceled?
That is correct.
Yes.
Okay, I do recall seeing that.
Yes. Very good. Thank you, Marty. Anything further?
Nope.
Moving on to item 9 on our agenda this evening, adjournment. The time is 8:35 p.m. Meeting adjourned. Have a great rest of the week. Night.
See you tomorrow.
Gary, I've got a question.
Oh, I can hardly wait to read all this.